You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 353, Chapter 14, The Tragedy. Well, you've been waiting for the better part of, 37 years to find out the fate of one Boba Fett, and this episode of The Mandalorian finally confirmed his exact fate. Now, we don't know all the details yet, but of course, we're going to break all that down, speculate somewhat, and talk about where The Mandalorian is going to go from here. So to help me do that is none other than Jonesy. Welcome back from vacation, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. I like the hat, by the way.
Oh, crap. I forgot to change it. Oh, well.
It's really cold. He's coming to us live from the North Pole as we speak. So
right. It was it's in the lower 60s today, but in Houston, it's been like in the 40s, which for us is,
oh, wow.
let's just shut the state down now, because in Texas,
can't work in that kind of weather.
That's right. I mean, God, I can't even work from home in this kind of weather.
Exactly. No, it's good to see you. Like the shirt there. Way to be a cheerleader. Really appreciate that.
Right. You had a great show last week, by the way. So it was a lot of fun having Andrew on. So appreciate stepping in.
Yeah, he was great. I really liked having him on here and just getting his viewpoints and stuff. So I was glad we were able to find somebody to kind of fill in for you. But no one can replace you, sir. So with that, let's get into talking about Chapter 14, The Tragedy. And same kind of thing here. If you're new to the show, we kind of do a quick overview. We get down into all the details to the nth degree, and kind of speculate on where we think the show is going to go. Obviously, this season and the rest of the series as a whole. So now it's called The Tragedy. What was the real tragedy for you? Because I think there's probably three of them that I can think of, but. Give me your overall thoughts on the tragedy and just what you felt with especially like Robert Rodriguez. I want to get your thoughts on his directing as well.
Well, yeah. First things first. When I saw so each one of these episodes, as soon as you get the title, you have a pretty good idea of what's about to happen, which is okay, I guess. When I saw The Tragedy, I was like, oh no, Albert. I was simultaneously like joyous because I was like, he's going to be right. And then at the same time, I was like, I don't want this to happen. Because I was like, there's no way that the Razor Crest makes it out alive. Because, I don't know, people were maybe thinking maybe Boba was going to die or the child, which is just isn't reasonable at this point. Mm-hmm. But I knew the ship was a goner. And I was very, very sad. Actually, I was a lot sadder than I thought I would be. And I thought they actually did that really well. We'll talk about that. But Robert Rodriguez, let me just tell you, some of the writing was a little suspect, or sus, as my daughter would like to say, from time to time. Yeah. Right. But Robert Rodriguez, oh my goodness, he knocked it out of the park with this episode, with the way he directed this thing. And I have to get your take on this. I don't know if we've ever had such a brutal and violent Star Wars ever in any kind of regard. I mean, limbs chopping off, anything like that almost seemed like cartoon violence compared to and this blew us away anything that the Armorer did back in season 1. Yeah. I mean, this took it to like, you were saying the nth degree earlier. I mean, this is just insane. I mean, oh my goodness. Yeah. Which I thought was amazing, by the way. Yeah. But it was totally different. It actually took me aback a little bit about younger viewers, about how they would be with this and a really angry Boba Fett. I mean, it was, I just, the way he directed this episode, though, was fantastic. Some of the shaky cam stuff. It just, man, I just loved how he framed every single shot in this episode. But I want to get your take on the violence in this one as well. Just kind of an overarching review on that.
Yeah, I mean, it was par for course. If you've ever seen any of Robert Rodriguez's movies, sometimes they can be a little campy. Sometimes I've heard even some of his best work. Some people will say it looks like a low budget film, but that's his thing, right? That's his shtick. It's his style. He's always done that, and either you like it or you don't. And I think for the most part, most people do like it. That's why he's been as successful as he has. He's also a fellow Austinite, by the way. I just want to throw that in there. But it was, and I put this like literally the night I was watching the show, I said, Robert Rodriguez's DNA is like all over this thing from beginning to end. This is exactly what he does. And it's crazy to think that he was kind of like a last minute director, right? I mean, he's come out, I guess, this weekend and said that originally he wasn't even like, he was not originally he wasn't going to be a director. They had to find someone last minute, and my last minute months ago still, right? But this was just kind of an opportunity that came up, and he couldn't pass it up. And he went on to talk about it was just like playing, he was a young kid again, all over again, playing with the Star Wars toys. And right, we've heard that from other directors as well. So, but yeah, I mean, I thought he did an outstanding job. And there's a couple in here. There's a couple like signature camera moves that he does. And if I remember to call them out when we get to that part, I certainly will. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And to your point, it was pretty like, it was graphic, but it wasn't like, it wasn't necessarily over the top or it was gratuitous because it's a Star Wars show and it's on Disney Plus, and you got to have some limits. Trust me, he can go a lot more gruesome and brutal, but that would be the word I would use for Boba Fett, right? It was a very brutal, visceral kind of reaction. I mean, you think about his character and where he's been this entire time and everything he's been through in the canon timeline. I mean, he's got a lot of pent up anger, right? He took it out in full force on these poor stormtroopers that had no idea what they were getting themselves into when they were sent down there.
Well, and while we're kind of on that subject, just since it's a natural segue, did it feel a little out of character for him, like up front with all of it? Because the way that we saw Django and the way we've seen even Din in this series is that they're always usually very calm and collected. They're very calculating and that type of thing. And yet we get this really raw version of Boba. Yeah. Did it take you aback immediately, or you were like, no, this is how I would be? I would be pissed as well about everything that's gone on in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think so. Your point's well taken. I think that's what I would expect him to be. I wouldn't have expected him to be the person he was when we saw him in Return of the Jedi, right? This to me says, okay, he's gone through some things, right? He's a very dynamic character, and that's what I really hope. Kind of like Maul and some of the other ones that Filoni's brought back and really fleshed out. Asajj Ventress is another one that comes to mind, right? Just immediately. Yeah. But I'm really looking forward to the dynamic characteristics of Boba Fett now that he's been through a lot. And I think we're seeing shades of that, right? We saw him angry. We saw him diplomatic in a way. We saw him hold his word, right? I mean, these are things that unless he's going back to old ways, this is a very different Boba Fett character than we're used to seeing, I think. In some ways very similar, but in some ways very different. And I say all that with only having this episode and not really having any context as to where he's been, right? And I think that's where, depending on how that plays out and what we hear about, I think ultimately that'll impact where he goes and how he develops as a character. So I'm really excited about this. And just quickly, I know before we get into this thing, the one thing that I was, we talked about this before season 2 started. We had the whole show, the final hype show. And I said I wasn't really looking forward to Boba Fett because I was worried that he would upstage him. And I said, unless he comes back and he's a different person, right? If he's just the same Boba Fett that we had back in Return of the Jedi and everything before that, or even in Legends, right? If you want to pull that up, then I was concerned that he was going to upstage upstage the Mandalorian, upstage the show. And I didn't feel that, right? I didn't get that sense. Like, it's there a little bit. I'm not going to say it wasn't, because I mean, that's all we were talking about. No one was talking about what the Mandalorian did in this episode, right?
how dumb he was, probably.
Yeah. All we did was talk about how he forgot his jetpack, he lost his ship, but the big
kept banging his head against the force shield. I mean,
yeah, right.
What else do you want?
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't his finest moment in this episode, right? But everyone talked about Boba Fett, and for good reason. We expected in this episode. Now from here, let's see where it goes, right? Let's see, just how much he does or does not upstage the Mandalorian. But you could argue that this season so far has really been an ensemble cast, right? Compared to like last season, where there were a lot of very solo focused type episodes on the Mandalorian, which we needed because we needed to know who he was. And I think we got a really good sense of that out of the first 8 episodes. This year is more about expanding the universe and broadening our bench, if you will, of different characters and bringing some back from the old one. But I think it's more of an ensemble cast this year than definitely was last year.
Right. And Dale has a good point. He said everyone fears the upstaging thing. He thinks the other characters enhance the show. And I was one of the ones that was really concerned about Boba coming into this, but I'm really getting on board with this. Yeah, thanks for putting it up on screen. I'm getting on board with this about the other Mandalorians coming in. We saw them in season 1, but with Bo and her group now, and even with Boba coming in with a different take on the Mandalorians, or really more of a different take of his life now. We're going to talk about his quote there about who he serves, basically. Mm-hmm. And I'm really starting to enjoy it. And we'll talk about kind of what the crew is looking like now and what it may be shaping up to be. But I was one of those that was a detractor from it at the first. And now I'm kind of getting on board with this because I think we're getting into a healthier group of people that can really move the story overall and get maybe little snippets here and there that kind of feed people like you and me of little lore aspects of things that we're going to get off and on throughout the next couple of episodes, I hope.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I'm pretty excited about it. And I don't think I would have said that, just about a month and a half ago or a month ago. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So last thing before we get into the actual show, just quickly, I felt like the other thing about this show was it was a break from the norm. We were getting the quest of the week, right? Last year was a lot of monster of the week. We've seen some of that this year. It was like the quest of the week. There was a lot of feedback going around. Oh, it's just another quest to another quest, another quest. And they're just kind of dangling this carrot in front of him. But this one really did kind of break with it. Now, granted, it was only 30 minutes, which I think was the only downside to this because I really wanted to see a lot more, but you can't have everything, right? And we had longer episodes already. So, but beyond that, yeah, it did feel like it was a break from the norm. And I think that's adding to how much people are just invigorated by this episode in a lot of different ways because it was different. It was very different than what we've seen so far in the first, 5 episodes prior to this. So,
yeah, I mean, stylistically as well as the narrative that they had in this one actually felt like there was a story contained within it rather than, like you're saying, quest of the week.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, let's get this. Let's break this whole thing down. Let's peel it back. It opens with Mando and Grogu. I get used to saying that. Are approaching Tython, and I love the fact. Like, I was really excited about this because I wasn't. It was either going to go one of two ways. Either we were going to pull the Band-Aid off like they've been doing. I should have known this is what they've just been doing, right? They've been telegraphing that they're just going to go right into it. They're not going to build us up any. But either they were going to go straight to Tython, or that would be kind of like the cliffhanger, and that would lead us into season 3. And I think that probably still will happen. But I did enjoy the fact that we got to Tython. Now, that said, okay, you guys know me. I'm a huge SWTOR fan. I'm a huge Star Old Republic fan. I can talk about this all day. I was really underwhelmed with Tython. It's my only negative feedback, and that feedback is so, I think, trivial at this point because the reason Tython was there was met, right? They didn't need to do anything more than what they did. I would have liked to see more because Tython is so rich in its landscape, right? And even if you go back to like some of the oldest locations in Tython, like the beginnings of Tython, those things have these really intricate statues and architecture and everything else. And I guess this is more in line with the sequel trilogy and Octo, whatever, however you pronounce that now. That being like wood and this is stone. And I get it. They're going more for that, I don't know, I guess more primitive look for it. Right. But even still, like just the landscape, I mean, it could have been anywhere. And there's certainly places on Tython I can attest to that are not exciting by any means, right? But it just felt like this was going to be a big momentous place, and it turned out to not be that. It was just kind of a bunch of rocks. It looked like a Stonehenge kind of thing. But anyways, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I had a similar take, but then so I had to get my Albert cap on real quick. And so how I viewed the Seeing Stone and this kind of pier in general was this was like a pilgrimage type of thing, right? Where the Jedi or a youngling or a Padawan had to go and make this kind of quest, if you will, for, I don't know, lack of puns here. But it was this pilgrimage of sorts to go up to this stone and this moment of reflection and transformation. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute of what it meant to that. And I was with you. I really would have liked to have seen more of the history of the Jedi. Now Ahsoka did say that it was an ancient thing and presumably in ruins and that type of stuff. Maybe laid to bare or maybe things have grown over it. But I agree. I wish we could have seen some things off in the distance, things that we could have nitpicked at just a little bit and grabbed things here and there. But I think it was okay for it to be on its own if we want to look at it from that respect of that it's meaningful insofar as that people have to climb this hill and climb this mountain or this peak of sorts in order to get to the stone, in order to have this this moment of transformation.
Yeah, I like the symbolism there too. Right.
Yeah.
So we get to Grogu who's playing with the knob again, and that was cool. And I know some people were kind of laughing that he was testing his name. And I'll tell you this, as a parent, if the minute your child acknowledges that you said their name, that is a very special moment, and you can't help but laugh and smile, right? I mean, it's great. And I know people have said, oh, it's kind of like a dog. Yeah, I guess it is kind of like a dog too when you teach a dog its name, but this is your child. It's a very different, it can be, at least for most people. I don't want to say that you can't love a dog more than a child. But
some people might disagree.
Some people may disagree. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The point is, that's why he was laughing. And it was cool that we got to see him laughing, or hear him laughing, I should say. I thought it was a good thing. He gave us another...
Is it in his character, though? I think this is maybe the part that people are struggling with, whether or not it's in his character, or is these behind closed doors type of moments where we get to see him finally starting to shed some of the outer rigidity that he has in his life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the latter, right? That's showing how comfortable he is with the child, how close or intimate the relationship is, that he's willing to let his guard down and just kind of be who he is under the armor in front of Grogu like that, right? I mean, it's just, I think that's exactly what it is. So, and it's good. I mean, we get to see that because, I mean, the minute he's with Boba, I mean, throughout the rest of this episode, he's a completely different person. You can almost hear it, right? The way he talks to Grogu and the way they're having their conversation is very different than he talks with anyone else in any of these episodes. So I think it says a lot about the relationship. Right. We got another Dank Ferrick moment in there, which didn't bother me. I know people were, oh, here we go, another Dank Ferrick moment, but I didn't mind it. It was, again, it was like a that's my boy kind of thing, right? Or a proud father-parent moment at that point. He tells him you're a very special kid, and I got the sense when he said that I mean, you got to feel like in his heart he doesn't want to leave him, but he's going to be the bigger person here and do the more responsible thing, and that is to take him somewhere, because he acknowledges that he's powerful, and by sticking around with Mando, that's not going to do him any good, right? He wants to see this child be successful, and so even though, it still sounds like he's willing to go through with this all and turn the child over to a Jedi so he can get the training, you got to feel in the bottom of his heart he's getting torn apart by this.
Right, and we know that he says it himself, I can't train you. Yeah. I don't know what to do with you. I don't know what to do with the powers you have. He doesn't understand them. He doesn't know where they come from. He doesn't know where they can go to, and the power that he has. Mm-hmm. And you can almost sense, it almost sounds like reverence at one point, but I got the sense of maybe just a little bit of fear in it as well. What he just doesn't know what this would mean. And he doesn't know, I think maybe it's the wherewithal if he doesn't know if he could control it or help him understand it to where it wouldn't blow up in his face. And I mean, because we all know how kids are when they start to become preteens and teens, or I mean, not even that old before they start pushing all the boundaries. So, I mean, what do you do with that? And I think he just knows he's way out of his element here of what he would be able to do for the kid. And like you said, it's the responsible. It's what's best for the child in order to do this and be able to put him with his own kind and someone who can actually help him through that path, which is just vastly different than anything that he's experienced.
Absolutely. We get to Tython. We've already talked about the architecture there.
Real quick, Albert. So when he was saying some of this, one of the things that I was curious about when he was going through and repeating, he's got to go with them. You have to go with them. It really felt like he was, and Stephanie said this to me actually, it felt like he was convincing himself as much as he was telling Grogu what he needed to do. Like it was the way that he had to convince himself that he needed to let go and to be able to break that connection so that, again, in the best interest of the kid to be able to do this. But did you get that sense that that's what he was doing, or was he really just talking to Grogu?
No. And I'm glad you brought it up, and kudos to Stephanie, because I think it's spot on. It's more Grogu it doesn't seem like Grogu even cares, right? He's sitting there talking to him, and all Grogu wants to do is play with the knob, right? That was him rationalizing everything in his head, getting comfortable with it all, hearing it externally from another source, right? That kind of thing, just to, reaffirm that this is the right decision, even though he may not feel it, that in his heart, it's definitely in his mind. So yeah, I would agree that that's exactly what he was doing. And I'm sure we've all done this at some point, right? In different things, probably not to this magnitude, but we've all done that in life. It's probably pretty common. I do like the line where he says, we're going to have to travel the last stretch with the windows down. Like it's right up there with like, would it help if I got out and pushed, right? Just these analogies to cars, right? That kind of, and this is great writing. This is what some of my favorite quotes and things that happen in Star Wars because they're grounded in reality. And, this is just another example of it, but I thought that was a really great line from him.
It took me a second to figure out what he was talking about, and then the visual came up. And I was
yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
right. I was like, what? You guys have? Is it manual, or does you have the auto button, or what?
I think in the Razor Crest it's manual. They've got knobs to roll down the windows.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, pre-Clone Wars era. So, we get to the Seeing Stone, and they end up walking up there. The Seeing Stone, again, very unassuming. It looks like a round rock of something. There's some great lines there. He says, "Does this look Jedi to you?" This is a seeing stone. Are you seeing anything, or are they supposed to see you? Which I thought was, interesting, because I think it could go either way, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But it's obvious that neither one of them really knows what the heck they're supposed to do. I mean, to be fair, like, I was surprised Ahsoka didn't. I was hoping Ahsoka gave her more instructions. It didn't sound like they ran with whatever she said in episode 13 or chapter 13. So other than just stick the child on the stone and something's going to happen. But
well, and like she said, he needed to see if it was Grogu's choice whether he was going to reach out or not. So Grogu had the choice of whether he was going to do something. And we saw him, it actually had a bit of a Last Jedi moment. Sorry, Mike, where Grogu puts his hand on the stone and starts to have that moment of contemplation, or that moment of kind of pulling in the Force and sensing something unique about it. But I liked how he put the viewer on his visor. It started looking around like there was an on-off switch or something like that. And I was really curious if we were going to see anything, though. And I thought it would have been cool to see something unique with it. But I mean, there was nothing there. But I just thought it was kind of, again, I'm with you. I liked the idea that, are they seeing you? And then also looking around, and is there something of uniqueness around there that he would have been able to see that someone else may not have been able to?
Yeah. So if you've seen my Twitter handle, and Mike, you can go ahead and cover your ears right now, probably for the next 5 minutes. But if you've seen my Twitter handle, I have a blue butterfly for Ben Solo on there, and I've had it ever since The Rise of Skywalker. But what's your take on the blue butterflies? And I know we've talked about them when we did the Vader comic. We broke that Vader comic down, and we talked about them in there and what they represent. But just I got to tell you, I was like, as soon as I saw them, I was freaking out. Like, what is happening? Because it was so in your face. And we'll get into the roll-on cartoon as well. But just your take on blue butterflies, and is that a thing for you here in Star Wars?
It's actually interesting because it's very parallels what we have here. So I went and pulled some of the things that blue butterflies represent. So just in case people aren't quite as aware, they have some various contexts within culture. So with butterflies, and then blue in particular. So butterflies are popularly thought to symbolize a person's essence or a soul, either their past, present, or future. So in some cultures, the blue butterfly is considered malicious or a vindictive spirit, which I thought was interesting because all the other ones are kind of converse of that.
Right.
It's often considered a sign of life, which makes sense right here. It's kind of also reminded me of like Lord of the Rings, right? When the butterfly came down. Right? Was it a butterfly or moth? Yeah, whatever.
I think it was a moth, but hey, you know what?
Yeah,
from far away, you can't tell the difference.
That's right. They all look alike to me. Yeah. But in most cultures, what the blue butterfly is, it's a symbol of acceptance and honor and energy, but also it can mean like meaningful purpose of life. And then the one I thought the most representative of probably what we see here is that a symbol of the spirit speaking through transformation and change, which I thought is what I kind of equated it to here. So Grogu is going and reaching out to the Force, and he's summoning whatever this stone actually allows him to do. And it was very Rise of Skywalker as well, if you will, with the big blue column and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was this moment of transformation where Grogu is making a decision. He's making a choice to reach out, and whatever he is, pushing out there, or maybe whatever he's receiving in, and whatever he might be hearing in return. It was just under this moment of, is it something that he is, it's this pivotal moment in his life where something is now going to happen because of this event specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of did the same thing. I was digging into a lot of research, and I don't really have anything to add to the symbolism of that, other than to say that in Star Wars specifically, I think we see examples of butterflies used for the light side of the Force. I can't think of one instance where it's ever been anything but that. So we had, like we talked about in the Vader comic, you saw the blue butterflies. They were put there intentionally. I kind of saw those as the fleeting, what last bits of innocence that Anakin had was kind of fleeting, or maybe still around. The light side, it represents that, right? So there was moments of that. We've saw it in the Clone Wars a number of times. There were some butterflies in Rebels, and in every one of these instances, again, well, it wasn't in Rebels; it was a Rebels magazine cartoon comic thing. But again, it was used there. And then the more recent one, the one that really kind of kicked this whole thing off for anybody that really wants to know, if you go out to StarWars.com, or I'm sorry, the YouTube channel for Star Wars, they do the roll-ons where they have the characters that look like BB-8s, and they're little fun cartoons, but there's like a two-parter, maybe it's a three-parter that they did with Ben Solo, Han Solo, and Chewie. And this is when Ben Solo's still kind of like 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And that's where they use these blue crystal butterflies extensively in those little 3 shorts. And from that's what spawned this whole resurgence of blue butterflies used to represent Ben Solo in his rebirth and all of that. So again, it probably wasn't going there. I think they were probably using it more symbolically of the light side, and like you said, a decision or a transformation, if you will, right? Renewal or rebirth in some way is probably what they were going for. But they were there for a purpose, and I don't want that to get overlooked by any means.
So what you're saying is there's a connection between Grogu and Ben Solo now.
Yes, Ben Solo is now alive thanks to this. No, kidding. I wish that were true, but
Grogu transferred his life force to create Ben Solo himself.
Right. Yeah. Something like that. Who knows? We'll find out here soon enough. But all right. So
if I say enough nonsense, something will come true.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we got a lot of the stuff we got right. So Slave One enters, and this was like a gasping moment, I think, for everyone involved. And I loved the fact that he held on that shot, right? When Slave One comes in, it wasn't just kind of a thing. I mean, the camera follows along with them. Again, this is more Robert Rodriguez, although it's
right,
not uncommon. But I just love that he hung on that, and hearing the sound of Slave One coming in, and I mean, again, it was just really unexpected because I think up until this point, you got to remember when we last saw Boba Fett in episode or chapter 9, right, the first one of the season, we were still speculating: is that Boba? Is it Rex? Is it some other clone? Right? This was. For me, it was a hard confirmation that, yes, indeed, this was Boba Fett. Yes, indeed, he does have his Slave One ship. And then this myriad of questions suddenly just invade your mind, right? And I think we got some answers, but there's plenty more here. But your thoughts on just seeing Slave One come into the frame like that?
It was really cool to see, but I'm with you. Like the question is just the floodgate opened.
Yeah.
Like, where the hell was he stashed in Slave One to where no one stole this thing over the year? But I think this talks a little bit to what we talked about then of he must not have been in the Sarlacc pit for very long at all. But it starts begging questions of why if he knew so much about, well, we'll get there, but it was really cool to see it. I was really cool to hear it as well. And they captured the essence of it. It wasn't quite as big sound wise as I was maybe hoping it would be. And I even cranked it up today when I rewatched it a couple of times and tried to see if I got that cinematic feel. And I didn't, which was a little bit of a letdown. Because it's just now it's kind of ingrained in our heads from the prequels in particular about what that sound is. Yeah. But it was still great to see it. I mean, it was recognizable instantly. It still more or less looks like it did exactly like it did in Empire and Return of the Jedi. So I mean, it was cool to see it, but it just raised a ton of questions all of a sudden, which kind of took me out of it for just a moment or two of all the things we had talked about. Like, how did we get to this place? How did Boba get to this place at all?
Right.
Especially when we start to get his backstory when he's talking with Mando and Fennec.
Well, I have theories. No shortage of those.
There was no doubt that was coming.
But you know what? One of the first things I thought when I saw Slave One was, holy crap, are we going to get seismic charges at some point, either this season or next season? Like, that's all I want now, right?
Goodness, I hope so.
Give me the seismic charges. Give me the sound. I want to see it on TV, hear it in my home speakers. I think it'd be amazing. So I'm looking forward to that. I guarantee you they're going to do that because it's so iconic and everyone talks about, what's your favorite sound out of Star Wars? That usually makes a list of some sort, right? Because of the work they did with that in Clone Wars or Attack of the Clones. Okay, so we get the force field. Let's talk about the force field. And it really felt like a true force field of sorts, right?
Yeah.
For the first time, you get the blue energy. It's kind of enveloping them. I don't know, symbolism again. Blue seems to be the light side. Blue lightsabers. The Force Ghosts turn blue. We talked about blue butterflies. I just wondered what that would have been like if they'd stuck somebody that was on the dark side on that scene stone. Is it a red light or is it yellow light or some other color? But
or can they channel it at all?
Yeah. Who knows? We had all the symbols.
Is this like a nexus point then? Do you think?
So in the Old Republic, there were devices not like this. I mean, they didn't look like this by any means, but the Rakata had created these things where you were able to teleport and communicate with one another. And this, again, I'm going thousands and thousands of years back in Star Wars.
Billions and billions.
That's a basement joke for anybody that's wondering. But yeah, so there were things like this. Similar, but not didn't look exactly like this by any means. So I think they were kind of playing on that a little bit or pulling from that in some way. But I will say that the intriguing part was just seeing the symbols, right? The old tongue that we could see around that perimeter, and it's hard to make that out. I think we try to break all that down when Rebels was out, and we saw. I mean, it's all over in Rebels. Anytime they went to a temple, a Jedi temple, you got to see those runes. I think of like Twilight of the Apprentice. There's one scene where they've got a wall just of these things, and I don't know that anyone's ever been able to decipher those because it's never been released. They've never even given us a couple words or letters to figure out what it actually says. But it was cool to see that. I mean, they did their homework and they certainly did did the right things there. But Mando tries to go in and touch this thing and gets bounced immediately out as soon as he gets close to it. And that is, I don't. What are your thoughts there? Like, is that? Do you think like it was protecting the person that's in that? And if that's the case, here's just hypothetically speaking, if that was the case, and Fennec Shand had actually fired at the child, do you think she would have been able to penetrate that force field?
I'm thinking no, she wouldn't have, because again, I mean, well, I don't know. You could always argue that plasma or whatever laser bolts are made of have some sort of different, physical disposition, whatever they might do, some physical property differences, but it doesn't seem like it would have. Mando clearly doesn't believe that because he also believes he can, push his way through and force his way into this thing and entirely without any kind of consequence. But it was interesting. It did very much feel like a protective field while the person is in this very vulnerable state, whether it's the force or whether it's this stone or whatever it is. And that's why I brought up the point about a nexus point, because something that powerful has to have, I mean, this seems like a very focused point of energy or a very dedicated thing that happens. And so that's why I was really curious, because it has to be something very popular to create this kind of energy and create this kind of concentration of presumably something related to the force.
Yeah.
And we've heard, I mean, in the expanded universe, we heard about force bubbles a lot, right? And this was primarily, I think, with the Solo kids in general. I think there was a lot more of this in the New Jedi Order books and in that series. But you had this concept of force bubbles. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that they're, again, borrowing a little bit from the old EU, from Legends, and saying, okay, this is kind of a thing in order to protect. And whether the child is channeling it himself, whether Grogu is doing it himself, or whether it's the stone and the force doing it, is a bit open to interpretation on that one. And I'm more leaning towards that it's the force doing it in this specific, it's almost like a access point or a fulcrum of something, right? No pun intended. To where, that this is what allows this type of thing to happen, even if you have, and we believe that Grogu is probably very powerful in the Force. It seems like they're suggesting this at the very least, aside from just being a unique, thing in the galaxy. But yeah, I think it is a force field of sorts, not a ray shield. I mean, so it's not as good as a ray shield apparently.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
Yeah, so my theory, and we were getting some responses from our live viewers, which, by the way, thank you guys for being here tonight. This always makes us feel very comfortable. But yeah, I think everybody was kind of in agreement here that no, Fennec Shand probably would not have been able to hurt the child because of the force field. So, and that's kind of where my mind is at as well. In terms of what that was doing, I guess the two theories I have are kind of what you said. Either this is when that started, he was immediately indirect, like that was him channeling and having a conversation with somebody else on the other end. Like I envisioned somebody else. I don't know if they have to go to another seeing stone, or maybe they're just there and suddenly they're hit with this blue beam that's connecting them right across the galaxy in some way. That's probably one theory. The other theory is that this is really just kind of a beacon. Suddenly it's emanating from this planet, right, from Tython. And if you're force sensitive in some way, your senses are going off and there's something out there and you can tap into that. I think that the dangerous part of this is that if that's the case, then what's to say that it is only, light side people that can do this, right? If you're broadcasting, I'm a force user, I'm powerful, whatever, and hear me. It seems like anybody could tap into that signal. So what's that going to mean, right? That there could be repercussions from this later on. Although, I mean, I'll trust Ahsoka enough that she said, when you do this, a Jedi will respond. So maybe it is a closed line of communication to only Jedi, but
again, we don't. Yeah, they don't know that the Sith still exist at this point, right?
Yeah,
they believe the Sith are extinct. Although I think that's always a very naive and delusional type of aspect because they're never really
evil will always be around.
Exactly, but this actually, I had a moment of thinking about it. What was the bridge in Thor that they use? I forgot what it's called, where they, the guy puts a sword in and
Heimdall and can't think of the name now.
Whatever. We'll call it the Sky Bridge because that's all I can think of. But anyway, it reminded me of something like that, right? Where it's this kind of this interdimensional gateway of sorts.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, the Bifrost. There you go. So it just reminded me of this kind of this gateway between this and another realm, or this and another, thing. And I'm with you. I mean, this is not going to call out just to light side users. I think, and I'm kind of thinking about Disturbance, which was an Empire certain point of view that we had discussed kind of offline a few weeks ago. Of where the Emperor can sense these massive disturbances when something goes on, and then all of a sudden have a moment of clarity. And something like this seems like a fairly significant event that anybody that had any kind of force sensitivity would have sensed something. Now, whether they choose to respond or not is something entirely different. And I think the other questions you have is, okay, do you have to be meditating in order to feel this? Or is it just like Obi-Wan when Alderaan explodes, is it something more along the lines of that, where it's just this explosion of force energy and it just overwhelms you?
Yeah.
Or, which of these scenarios might it be? And I'm kind of in the camp that it might be something closer to the Obi-Wan experience, where you have this thing and it's just overwhelming, and then you have to meditate to figure out what it is, because it's not clear exactly what it is. But maybe you hear a voice or something like that. You have a vision in your head. And maybe the more powerful users, like a Luke Skywalker or something, presumably would make a little bit more sense out of that, kind of like the Emperor did with when he was uncovering those secrets. Don't want to spoil any of that for those who haven't read it.
Yeah. Well, and so then I guess the next question that I would have is, okay, so let's say someone does hear this or acknowledges it. Right. Either if they don't have a conversation, because I don't know that Baby Yoda is going to be able to say, oh, here I am, I'm on Tython, and I just got kidnapped. All right. He's going to have a constant communication at that point. Or is it one of these things where whoever heard it now has a lock on them, right? And so now that Grogu has left and he's jettisoned into hyperspace aboard Moff Gideon's ship, is that person, whoever acknowledged it, are they going to show up because they're able to sense now, right, that Grogu is out there in the galaxy? He's almost got like a tracking beam or a tracking device of some sort on him, via the Force. So
do you buy into like a kind of a Force trail of sorts? Like if you know where someone was at some point, kind of like a dog, sniffing out a criminal or something like that. Once they get the scent, they can track it.
Yeah, we had.
Are you someone who believes that they can do this through like space and all of that too, or is this? No, not really. I just know where you were last.
No, we had. Was it Quinlan Voss? So Quinlan Voss could, whatever the power is, and someone look it up or tell me if you know. Quinlan Voss had the ability to touch an object and be able to tell what had been there, some history of it, that sort of thing. But there was a Jedi, I want to say, that had the ability to pick up the trail of other Force users and stuff like that. I think all really powerful Jedi, or at least some of them that have, or I should say Force users, not Jedi, but Force users have this ability to sense when another Force user is around, provided that they're broadcasting, if they will, right? I mean, because like you think about Luke Skywalker or Ahsoka Tano, they were able to just shut it off and go away and hide, and Yoda as well, right? Those guys could do it. But then like you think about when Obi-Wan walks into the Death Star and Darth Vader says, sense of presence, that kind of thing, that whole line. So I think there are, I think all Force users probably have this ability to do so to some extent, but I know there were, and I can't remember the name of it, in Legends, I could have sworn there was one that had this, like, really, he could hone in on anyone that was really Force sensitive. Maybe it wasn't Old Republic. I want to say it was in the future, but but yeah, so the quick answer is yes, I do believe that does exist.
Yeah, and Jackson did clarify this. Psychometry is what Quinlan Voss had.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Good. I'm glad these guys are here because I can't remember all this.
Man, it's like a real life dictionary, like real time dictionary. Thank God.
Right. You guys make this show way better than it is, so thank you for doing that. Okay, let's get into Boba Fett. He finally says, "I've been tracking you, Mandalorian," and so this is where. Like I said, we talked about this. I said, if he shows up, then we're gonna have to ask the question: how did he track the Mandalorian? My theory was that because the Razor Crest was in such bad shape for the first 5 episodes that it really wasn't hard to track. The only sticking point here is, if you think about it, you could probably trace the trail back, right? If he started with Cobb Vanth, which I'm assuming he did, that leads him directly to what's her name, Palo. What the heck's her name?
We don't really talk about it much.
The Ripley character, right?
Right.
It's somebody giving her name. So that would lead her to there, right? From that, then that leads you to Frog Lady, and then from Frog Lady that leads you to
was it Peli?
Peli, yeah, Peli Motto. And then from Frog Lady to, I mean, you can plot the course, right, to get there. So it's not hard to kind of put two and two together and figure out how he was able to trace them. There's another theory I know that people are touting out there that maybe he is in cahoots with Moff Gideon, and we know there's a tracker currently on the Razor Crest, and so that was what allowed him to go to Tython, because Tython, well, I don't know. In Legends, Tython was it was just kind of out there, but I mean, this is the first time we're really hearing about Tython in canon outside of the Afra comic, right? So it doesn't sound like everybody's talking about it, but it isn't the most. It's in the core. I guess what I'm saying is it's not a planet that just gets visited all the time and everybody knows about it, right? It's been buried for so long. But so yeah, but I don't buy into that theory. Like it feels like a lot of unnecessary smoke and mirrors to have Boba Fett working with Moff Gideon. He's going to pull a double on him and turn out to be a bad guy really after all, and he's not going to team up and he's going to turn on him. I just don't see all that happening. I mean, I get it. That's what, yeah. I mean, I get it. That's his character. It was his character, but that would be really uninteresting. It would be like, okay, so this guy has done nothing. He's not developed in any way over the course of this, however long he's been gone. And it just feels flat to me. But your thoughts on how he tracked him, and do you buy into the whole he's working for Moff Gideon secretly here?
I don't think he's working for Moff Gideon at all, because we hear the genuine surprise in his voice a little later in the episode. Yeah. And I think, Boba was a bounty hunter, so he's good at what he does, right? So he can pick up a cold trail and things like that. There are a ton of potential. I hate using the word plot holes because that's not always an accurate terminology, but it's difficult to kind of get there and figure out what he's doing. So what I kind of gravitate to is that there is a tracker on the Razor Crest. So it's possible that he is able to, run a trace on a bunch of different, frequencies or whatever that might be. And so he's able to, track that rather than, I'm not really of the opinion that he put a tracker on the Razor Crest himself, because I don't know that he knew where he was. How would he know that he was there again, and that type of thing? Now, the questions I have are kind of go back to, if Boba knows so much about where the armor was, and it was with Cobb Vanth, it's been, 7-9 years since Jedi?
Yeah.
Why did he not go after Cobb Vanth? Because it's clear that if he knows his name, he knows where he's at and he knows everything about the town. Was it that, he was doing good and he was cleaning things up and he was okay with this? I don't think that's the case, because we clearly hear how much the armor means to him a little bit later on. But there's just some gaps there about why it took him so long. If he knew so much about the armor, that part is a bit of a disconnect for me, where I would have preferred him to be a little more surprised that there's where the armor is when he sees the Mandalorian, and then he begins the tracking, rather than knowing kind of the history of it for the last several years and really not able to do anything about it. But he's got his ship. So it's at the risk of being critical, I'm trying not to be as critical, but there's just a bit of a gap there for me of how that makes sense and why that works. And another case of kind of suspending belief a little bit here to be able to bridge these gaps. And they tried, but it was just a little bit sloppy, a little bit there for me.
So I get it. And this question has come up, but we were talking about it in Discord, I think yesterday or a couple of days ago. It was only been 2 days, but it was probably yesterday. We were talking about this, and so the question is, why did Boba Fett not go after Cobb Vanth if he had the armor? Right. So and I go back to the theory I threw out there from episode 9, the first episode of this, or chapter 9, the first episode in the season. I don't believe that Boba Fett was really I don't think he knew where the armor was. I think he was probably left for dead. He may have, we don't know how long it took him to recover. We don't know what his recovery was like. Maybe he had amnesia. I threw that out there, as he didn't know who he was for a very long time. And then suddenly when Mando showed up, right, back in season 1 with, wannabe Han Solo, and suddenly, that sparks everything and all his memories come back. My point is, I can give you all kinds of theories that probably would work. You may not like them, but they probably work. The point is, if and when Boba Fett knew that Cobb Vanth had his armor, I guarantee you he would have gone after it. So you got to, I'm at least giving him the benefit of the doubt to think, if that's true, then there has to be a very compelling reason as to why that didn't happen. And that's where I think you can throw a lot of different other theories out there in terms of why, like amnesia, or he didn't know the armor was even out there. He thought it was a lost long and gone, and then suddenly he got wind that no, their armor is around, and he's not been able to track it. I mean, we don't know all the details there, and I think that's where the gap is. Really, it's in the details. We don't know the details here. Right. But yeah, I guarantee you, if he knew that Cobb Vanth had the armor, he would have gone after it. He would have taken it back, because we know how dedicated he is to this thing. That's his dad's. Now we have this whole history behind it. So yeah, there's got to be a good reason as to why. I don't think they would leave that open. So hopefully we find out. I think we're going to. It may not even be this season, depending on how much time we've got left here, unless it's just a casual conversation they're having, on Slave One as they're heading to go find, what's his face over there, Mayfeld.
Mayfeld, that's right.
Yeah. So maybe we get that. I don't know, but yeah, it is a good question, and I think it begs an answer, which I'm pretty sure that we'll get at some point. We got of course, the really great line of "I'm just a simple man trying to make my way, in the galaxy." His dad said "universe" back in Attack of the Clones. The "like my father before me" is the next line of that, and I mean, the minute I heard that, I even wrote it down in my notes. I'm like, that's Luke Skywalker talking about it, right? There's something. I mean, and I love this. This is, and Utini said it earlier. I threw it up on the screen here, but we are getting a very Clone Wars Boba Fett, right? And in this whole relationship with the father and how much he looks up to his father, and especially after what happened to him and with Mace Windu and all that. But I mean, there's some genuine and sincere pride here, and love for his father and respect for his father for all the things that he did for him and what he provided for him. And I love that aspect of it, right? Because you've got this dichotomy. You've got this dichotomy of, like, you've got a father who has a child, and you've got a child who no longer has a father, right? You've got two Mandalorians, and they're very different situations when it comes to fatherhood. And I think from that point, I think it's going to spark a very interesting conversation. I really feel like the Mandalorian has a lot to learn from Boba Fett in a lot of different things, and I feel like Boba Fett has a lot to learn from Din as well, right? From the Mandalorian himself. So I think it's a really great. I'm pretty excited about this, I got to say, but I don't know. I've been rambling. Go on. So.
Yeah, let me pose a question to you then. So we know Boba's history with Jedi, not real positive, right?
Yeah.
Mace kind of did something to his dad, was a little bit egregious, and then even Luke. Well, I guess Han, but him and Luke were having a sparring match, so he's come across Jedi before, right? Presumably, he doesn't know what the child's value is, right? They know there's a high value on the target, or they know there's the bounty's been increased, as Fennec tells us here in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that he knows what is actually going on with the child, or what the child is, not who it is, but what he is.
Right.
Do you think, so to go back to your earlier point of, he turns on Din and company and teams up with Gideon, do you think if he learns that, do you think that's still possible that he would have second thoughts about it and may actually turn his allegiance because of the force sensitivity of Grogu?
I think it's possible, but I got the sense that he wasn't the coolest with the Empire. Like, I got the sense that he has no love for the Empire any more than he does for the Jedi Order. And you could chalk that up to maybe he felt like he was left for dead by the Empire in some way. We don't know the history there. I don't know where he was in terms of his standing with the Empire after he turned, after he got Solo. For all we know, he was just, Jabba's bounty hunter and hung out there at the palace. But I don't know, again, from canon perspective, not from Legends, but we don't know exactly what happened. So, yeah, is it possible? Sure. I think it would be possible that he would favor the Empire more than the Jedi after he finds out all these things and realizes that you're running around with Ahsoka, and you've been running around with, this child that's force sensitive, and you have no idea what they did to my dad. That I can totally see that.
Asajj screwing him over.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, there's plenty of reasons for him to hate anything and everything to with the Jedi or to do with the Jedi. The only thing that would, I think, prevent him from really going that far is if he didn't have a good relationship with the Empire as well. Which is stronger or weaker, maybe.
Right.
But so Mando starts giving him the third degree or the eighth degree, ninth degree, whatever. Right. Did you take the creed? And he says, I give my allegiance to no one. And this was really speaking of the Boba Fett we thought we knew, because this is going to change here in just a little bit. But he says, he says, obviously this is the same line. Or I'm sorry, the Mando thinks Boba's armor came from the Purge. which I thought was really cool because he's sitting there. He doesn't know all the history. He doesn't know exactly what's going on. He thinks this armor is just, Beskar.
Another war trophy, basically.
Right. Same thing that, same situation when he picked up, when he was with Cobb Vanth. Right. Which, by the way, so the armor now is Beskar, I'm assuming. And this is change from
not
Plasteel or Durasteel, right? Not Plasteel, Durasteel, right. Which is fine. I don't have a problem with it. The only issue I have with the armor is it doesn't look like Jango's armor. I mean, structurally it looks the same, and I know in Legends he modified it and did a couple things to it, and of course it doesn't fit like it used to. And I really like the fact that it doesn't fit like it used to. As somebody getting
snug in the
somebody
snug in the abdomen there.
Yep, it's exactly how I would look if I cosplayed. But it feels like it is a different. Even the shoulder pad, like the shoulders themselves, they don't look exactly the same. So I don't know. It's fine. I'm not really going to get hung up on it, but it is. I like. In fact, I like it more. I like the fact that it is Beskar and it's not, Durasteel at this point.
Well, and I had a conversation with Jason, one of our friends from the Smoking, Drinking, and Space podcast, and we were talking about this specific subject. And the way I kind of got there with it, because he had a bit of an issue with it because of another case of retconning, right? And to me, this is one of those opportunities you have in order to clean up some of the things that you had. And yeah, it's retconning to an extent, but now it's kind of bringing this consistency back to the overall story where we know a lot more, we've built a lot more up, and we can say that that's a negative thing or that's a bad thing or we're undoing the things of the past. But something like like the armor and stuff, I don't know that it doesn't change the story really at all with it, which is why I'm okay with it. And I don't get too caught up, is Durasteel versus this or that. I mean, we kind of had this debate about whether or not Din's armor was truly Beskar at the beginning of the season, or maybe it was Durasteel. And I'm kind of okay with you get, your initial set of armor is not Beskar and you have to earn the Beskar, or something like that. But I didn't really, it's retconning to an extent, but I really don't have a problem with it. I view it more as cleaning things up. And Jango was prominent enough to where I think that it would be Beskar, if not. But it started to really give me a lot of questions, though, about, what was Jango's affiliation with the Mandalorians. He talks about that he spoke, that he fought in the Mandalorian Civil War, which was an interesting revelation to us. But in Attack of the Clones, we really didn't get this idea that he was really affiliated with anybody or really joined to anybody at that point. And we know that the Mandalorians were still prominent at that time, and because before the Purge and all this stuff. But so it was a little bit confusing to me that that Jango was so prominent in these roles and in the kind of Mandalorian community, if you will, to where that Boba, but because it makes more sense that he has no affiliation with anyone. And, like, to your point, is it just because he was forgotten, or was it that he just never had it in the first place? And it's really unclear how Mandalorians operate as a matter of norm in any of this stuff to know how important, family is to them, quote unquote.
Yeah. So hold that thought. I'll come back to that. Because if you have
a theory?
No, it's so, well, I do, but it's actually more, if you've got a Marvel Unlimited subscription, which I highly recommend, by the way, they've done a really good job with that app. But it gives you access to all their back catalog of comics. There's a comic called Jango Fett Killing Seasons. And I went ahead and read it yesterday, the whole thing. It's like 5 issues, I think, or 6 issues.
And this is canon.
Well, it's Legends, but this is where they're pulling this storyline from. And I'll kind of summarize it here in just a little bit. But to what you're saying, though, when Almec in the Clone Wars is talking about Boba Fett, he's like, Boba Fett's not even a Mandalorian. And right. And that's what I've said. It's very different. We wrote him off as a Mandalorian for so long because Jango was never a Mandalorian. And now we're getting the sense that, okay, he is a Mandalorian, but he's a Mandalorian in the sense that we know Din Djarin to be a Mandalorian, right? So it begs that question of what is a Mandalorian, and things have changed. And I think somebody like Almec was probably one of the, there was definitely a line between the people that were born on Mandalore. Those were considered, quote, the true Mandalorians versus those that were brought in as foundlings, right? And I think those people were probably, snubbing their nose at the other Mandalorians, that they're not really Mandalorians. And I think that's where Almec was coming from when he made that comment about Jango Fett. But I think what we're learning is, he really is a Mandalorian in the sense of the Mandalorian that we know from this series. And I'll get to the history there with that here in just a little bit when we get to the when he shows him the chain code on his armor.
Okay.
Okay. Let's talk about Fennec Shan showing up. I know we talked about whether or not she was alive or dead. I said she was alive.
Dead.
She was dead, though. Dead. I will give you that because they did say she was dead. Bubba gives us that really great line about, but fate sometimes steps in to rescue the wretched. Speaking of Fennec Shand, as well, speaking about himself, right? I mean, he's clearly talking about himself in that moment. But we got so here's a Robert Rodriguez thing. I mean, he is known for his Mexican standoffs. I can't think of a film where he didn't do this in.
Well, hold on. I'm glad they showed how, that Fennec pulled off her abdomen to show us exactly what they did, even though that still raises a ton of questions. But I was glad they at least took a second to show that he had to do something. Now, how Boba had access to all of this stuff, and I guess now he's either a biologist or a doctor or something, and a surgeon and an electrician. And Boba's awesome apparently. But I was glad they at least took a minute to show us that he didn't just give her some tea tree life or something like that he had found in the sands of Tatooine. He actually had to do something to her to make her function and operate.
Yeah. Which, I don't what is it, like a robotic stomach or abdomen? I don't know what it was.
Really don't know. I mean, I paused and looked and I felt a little perverted at it. I was
whoa, hey.
I know, right? PG show here. Or PG-13 at the very least.
Ma'am.
But I didn't know what I was looking at. I was like, what happened? What actually, I really don't know, but I was glad they at least took a moment to show us that they just didn't rub some dirt on it and she was good.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No one's ever really truly gone in Star Wars. So keep that in mind. So we get the Mexican standoff, right? You've got Fennec is pointing her gun at the child. Mando's pointing his gun at Boba Fett, and
Boba's just chilling.
Boba's just chilling. But it was good. I love the fact that they did that, and he wants him to put his jetpack down, and that's the whole Mexican standoff. You put yours down before I do mine. We do it at the same time, that kind of thing. But that was really, I hate to say it, but as much as I think they were trying to cover that up as a plot thing, right? A plot mechanism, because once he puts the jetpack down, it changes the dynamic of that whole fight because he can't go up there and do the wonderful things that he does, but. Which I always question is why didn't you run back and get the jetpack when you went back down to the third?
Don't get me started, man.
All right, we'll again disbelief here.
But so let me ask you though. So because this was asked of me, why did he want him to put the jetpack down? So what's your theory? I have an idea, but what's your theory about why it was important for him not to have the jetpack?
I think because Boba Fett wouldn't be able to pursue him. He would have been able to escape, and maybe he goes back and blows up his ship or whatever, but. That was really the only way to guarantee that Fett wasn't going to pick up the child and fly away, and then they had to be chasing him. I think he was just trying to landlock him without the pack.
Yeah, and I kind of took it that he could have taken Boba and then shot up and taken Fennec out probably at the same time or very close succession in that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean he knows the benefits of having a pack more than probably anybody, right?
He'd have the high ground. Sorry.
Maybe that's what it was. I've heard rumors of the high ground. So,
stories of yore.
Yeah, long ago. Oh boy, I'm lost on my notes here. Where are we at?
We were talking about Fennec, the Mexican standoff, and now the dead speak.
Oh yeah, the dead speak. So, and this, I put that in the show notes. The dead speak, just because it was Boba Fett and Fennec Shand who were now talking.
He put an exclamation point in there just for emphasis to make sure he resonated with Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, just to be clear, in case anybody had any doubts, that anybody being you, Jonesy, of where that quote was from.
I was shocked I had to look it up. I definitely didn't wear this hat intentionally.
Right. So Boba makes him a deal, right? He says if Mando gives him the armor, both Boba and Fennec will ensure the safety of the child as well as Mando's. I mean, he's essentially guaranteeing him that we won't kill you, I guess, or it sounds like the latter, since I guess Fennec is saying that the bounty on the child is very high right now. She says, the money's crazy. Yeah. There's a crazy amount of money being thrown at the child right now, and we could easily just turn that in, but we're here for the armor kind of thing. So, but I guess the question is he in now? And I'm kind of jumping ahead. This is one of the final questions I had, but let's just talk about it now. I mean, I get the sense that this is it. This is the buddy cop thing, right? You've got two Mandalorians and a slave one, a fire spray starship. And is he going to be true to his word? And how long do you think this is going to go on for?
Yeah, I don't have any reason to not to disbelieve him at this point. And because he could have just said, all right, well, peace, I'm out. Yeah, I kind of held up my end and tried. So sorry. But yeah, he seems genuine that he's going to stick around and help out. It seems like Fennec has a little bit of reservation on this. But again, she owes him a life debt effectively, right? So it just makes a lot of sense that she's going to go along with whatever he wants. And if Boba is this character of honor, which I got to be honest with you, I don't know that we've got a sense that that's him. I'm trying to remember back to some of the Clone Wars episodes to see if maybe I'm just wrong in my assessment of him. But
about what?
Didn't, whether that Boba is really dedicated to any, well, or just dedicated to a group or willing to keep his word on something. I can't remember because he's been lied to so many times with, Asajj and some other folks that I'm trying to remember if he's even worth it or, worth his money on this one.
Yeah. I mean, he was really all in for himself, right? He was like he was like Han Solo, but they were very similar in Legends, right? They were all about themselves, looking out for themselves as best as they could. In Clone Wars, he had his group of people that I would say he was loyal to, but I mean, they were all bounty hunters and, scum and villainy. So
when he needed he needed Bosk and company just to, pull off the jobs and do the bigger jobs in particular. So I didn't really view it as any kind of, I guess in some of those, he was always willing to, we had to split the money and whatnot and the share and everybody gets their piece of it, I guess. But, I never really fashioned him for the type that kept his word. And the type that, was trustworthy and someone that you could put all your chips in on.
Yeah, no, I would tell you that's probably true. And that's why I'm hoping that this is a new side of him, right? He's grown older, matured, been through a lot, had some near-death life experiences or near-death experiences, right? So
probably some painful near-death experiences.
Yeah, grueling, suffering near-death experiences.
But not for 1,000 years, so got himself lucky.
He got out pretty quick. Yeah, like I said, we talked about this. He was out within a few days at most, if you do the math. So
sure seems like it, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the first shuttle, which, by the way, that shuttle coming in, that's a First Order shuttle, which when I saw it, I was like, what the heck? The First Order's here. And then it shocked me when the Stormtroopers ran out. So, I guess just alluding to the fact that that's already kind of around, establishing. They've got the new, equipment coming in, that sort of thing. So, new change of order, which is cool.
Very reminiscent of Force Awakens.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I wore this just for the show. But so the Mando, he tries to go through the force field again. He gets knocked out, and this time he gets knocked out unconscious, which again is convenient because we don't want Mando around because we can showcase Fennec Shand and Boba Fett fighting. But let's talk about them in terms of just that whole fight sequence. I know you said it was pretty brutal. It was violent was the word I think you used. But overall, I mean, this was Rodriguez. I mean, this is everything Rodriguez does in his action films. There was the one scene that I'll also mention is there's a scene there where the camera starts at Boba's face and the camera pulls back. And as it pulls back, it's pulling back and down. And then you get the elongated, the gaffy stick and it stops at the very end. That is Robert Rodriguez's like signature move. He does that with guns and machetes and you name it. He's done that in just about every movie. So it was kind of, again, his DNA is really all over this thing. But your thoughts on just overall the battle and what that looked like for you?
It was amazing. And I'm with you. The way that he shot this whole sequence is absolutely amazing. I love the camera work on the gaffy, like you said. Boba's also dragging it behind him, which again is just another classic take from horror movies and from action movies and from even things that have drawn it from like a Quentin Tarantino type of style of sorts, right? And you just get this, this energy behind it, and the faces that Boba makes is just this. Oh, I can't quite think of the word of it, but just this just animal, like almost this primal kind of look and this fierceness to him that is
savage.
So savage. Yeah, there you go. It was very savage. It almost like he enjoyed it of sorts, which really, really took me off guard because we've always seen these guys be so cold and calculated, and to have him have so much passion and like savagery and just primal instinct type of thing, this bloodlust almost, was just incredible to me. And the way that he dispatched the stormtroopers was just epic. It was great. And Fennec, actually, it was great to see Fennec. I wish the way that she was holding the gun and stuff like that, but we got to see that she's worth her salt. Like, she doesn't miss. She only missed, I think, I counted like 3 or 4 times in that entire sequence. Mm-hmm. And I think a couple of those were because of stormtroopers behind her rock, but it was right on target.
Yeah.
But man, the shattering of the helmets, the stormtrooper helmets. I mean, the one that was just completely mangled was unbelievably gruesome of sorts. And you're just like, that face did not, no, don't take that helmet off, please. But it was great that, these things, and had a couple conversations about, well, how is he able to stab through the armor and whatnot? And we have to remind ourselves, this is plastoid. This isn't Durasteel or anything. And I think there's been some jokes about, I think maybe it was a certain point of view or something where, why am I wearing this armor? This armor doesn't really do anything for me.
It's never done
maybe this
anything.
was Legends. I can't remember where it was made fun of, but it was like a tongue-in-cheek type of thing. Like, this is useless stuff.
Yeah.
It just looks, and why am I in the white armor and then dark and whatever? Anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, it's from not really camouflagey. But yeah, so in the armor, in this, we were really geeking out, or I was at least in Discord the other day. I had mentioned that the armor has never been worth it, in my opinion. And it goes back to it goes back to the 80s, the 80s role-playing game by Weston Games, the Star Wars RPG. If you look at just from a stats perspective, for what it provides you, the pros do not weigh the cons by any means at all. It's hard to see in it. It was cumbersome. Your agility modifiers went down, and they never really rationalize why, outside of just, it does protect you from like somebody punching you, right? Or somebody hitting you with a melee weapon. Maybe not a gaffy stick like Boba Fett did, but it does provide some protection. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's just not worth it. Like I wouldn't wear that thing if I had to. Right. But one thing that we did get to see in here, and this was leaked months ago, was this mortar trooper or whatever. I don't know what the official name is that they gave him, but we saw a picture of him. I know there was people talking about, is this going to be like a Cody or somebody else? Obviously that wasn't the case, but it was another new stormtrooper, which is always great, right? We know there's so many of these guys out there, but it was cool to see him firing mortars the way he was.
Well, it's so curious, in canon, we don't really see post prequel content. We don't really see stormtroopers with different color armor, like hardly ever.
Yeah.
There's been a few, we've seen black, but we don't really see a lot of color anymore. Like we had to designate the troops, the legions, or the whatever they were called, the outfits, and the companies and all of that. And especially for rank and everything else that we had in the Clone Wars, we haven't seen any of that type of thing, or very little of it, maybe in any of the original trilogy or the sequel trilogy either. So there's just not a lot of it. So it was really curious to see a different color all of a sudden beyond like a elite TIE fighter pilot. It's about the only variation we've seen. If you play Squadrons, you get a lot of variation there, but other than that, we don't really see that. So it was really cool to kind of see it. And I know the people, so I'm a huge fan of Commander Cody. He's my boy, but no, not Cody.
Not Cody. I think
Cody would be, Cody. He was a commander. First of all, he'd be really old by this point too, but he'd been doing mortars. You kidding me? Come on.
Yeah.
Cody's the bomb.
He is the bomb.
Not a mortar.
Not a mortar. Yeah. Not that kind of bomb. So this is, I think this is some of the influence too that we see in the First Order, right? The First Order gave us some color variations, a little bit, and maybe the First Order is influencing Stormtroopers at this point, or Stormtroopers influence the First Order. Who knows? But yeah, it's points well taken. We didn't really get a lot of this in the original series, and that may just because that was created 40 years ago, and there was never any intention of ever going back there, and so they didn't really flesh all that out. But either way, it is cool to see it. I love the fact that we had a mortar stormtrooper. If anybody knows their real name or what they're calling them, please let me know. I wasn't able to. It
was very different.
Out. Yeah. We got the E-Web again. Then we got Fennec Shan running from that. We got all of that. The way it's shot is all Robert Rodriguez. And I know people were like, this seems kind of fan filmy. Well, hate to break it to you, but that's just what he does. So if you've ever seen Dusk Till Dawn, it can get kind of campy, but that's his style. And there are a lot of people that like that style, including myself. We got The Rock.
Actually, this was very reminiscent of the way he shot Dusk Till Dawn. A lot of it was. Yeah.
There, we got the Rolling Rock, the Indiana Jones moment. I felt bad for that poor Stormtrooper. It looked like he was really trying to shoot down that rock before it hit him.
Making some progress.
He was chipping away at it, just not fast enough.
Right, and the Rolling Rock wasn't as much the Indy callback as I thought her pushing the rock was. Because you remember when he's in the well, is it the Well of Souls when he's doing this in Raiders?
Yeah, he's in the Well of Souls. He pushes back the
column to knock through the wall, right?
Yeah, it was a statue.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's statue. But I thought that was great. We don't ever see that kind of stuff, so I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was cool. I enjoyed it. And then, like you said earlier, we got to see.
You can't be casual about Indiana Jones, Albert. Come on.
It is my favorite movie all time, but
those guys love Dr. Jones.
Yeah, Well, now you're crossing the streams. You're getting one.
I am.
Up here. But Fennec, like you said earlier, we got to see her showcase a little bit right there, where she was just shooting people left and right. She had that cool moment that where she's diving back, falling back, and shooting. That was all. Again, that's all. Well, it's stunt double true, but that was all Rodriguez too. All of his characters do these crazy jumps and shoot while they're shooting, that kind of thing. Very John Woo-ish, if you will, where a lot of that inspiration came from. But yeah, she was kind of a one shot, one kill for the most part throughout all of this. And then the second shuttle comes up, and this is where Mando finally comes through. He still can't get to the force field. He leaves to go get his jetpack. The field drops, and then Grogu falls over on his side. And the minute that fell, I think we all just kind of went, "Oh no! Like this is
here it comes.
Yeah, something's going to happen here because he's no longer protected, and he's just up there. You got a baby up on a rock.
Can we call him a baby now, though?
He's a baby,
but he's had training and stuff.
So
by the end of this episode, you can't call him a baby.
Okay, fine. I'll call him. Okay, I don't know. I'll think about it. For this episode, I'll call him a baby, just because I'm not going to weed it out of my notes here. But so yeah, any thoughts around what exactly happened? I guess he was just drained, right? He was used. See, that was the thing when he was in that force field. I wasn't sure. Like he seemed like he was fine. That certainly. But if that was really he was using the force to do something. Man, that had to have taken a lot out of him because he was in that thing for a long time, right? A few minutes, definitely for a few minutes, 5-10 minutes at least.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that he did take a lot because, again, he has to channel it. And if we believe that Grogu has a significant amount of power in the Force, which I think we're all kind of leaning towards, right? Then, yeah, it would be very and he is young. So is he a baby? I don't think so. But he's very young still and still very much learning to use the Force and to recover from it. And how much does it take from exertion? We saw this with Luke in Empire too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Him trying to lift the starship or the X-wing, and he's heavy breathing when he's done, and he's exhausted, and he's still in that developmental cycle of everything. And even with training, it's still exerting for him because he just doesn't have the sustainability of it. Yeah. So yeah, I think he's just exhausted. He can't. I think the Seeing Stone probably enhanced things a bit, but I think it's still largely him activating it. And then it's drawing its energy from you, right? From everything around you.
Okay, so let's talk about this. I was going to save it for a little bit later, but why don't we? I want you to speculate because we had a chance to talk about this with Andrew on the last episode about Ahsoka tells him, "Hey, somebody will reach out to him, or Jedi will find him, or contact him." But give me your thoughts on who you think you'd like to see and maybe not like to see answer the call here.
Oh man, this is so hard because with Filoni involved, and now that we know that Thrawn is potentially tangentially, maybe directly involved with this series now. Is Ezra on the board? It seems like Ezra's on the board, right?
Yeah, I would say he is. Yeah,
from an in-person perspective, right? Does Ahsoka come back? Ahsoka wouldn't have sent him away if she was going to come back, I think.
Right.
So I don't know that we're going to see Ahsoka come back over the last couple of. Would I love to? Yeah, I thought Rosario Dawson did a great job, and wow, I sounded like Mike there for a second. Rosario Dawson. There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry for you, Rhode Island folks. But so I don't think it would be Ahsoka, just because why would she send him away and then just show up? Of course, there's been a lot of these types of moments in The Mandalorian, so it's entirely possible. Ezra's on the board. Do we hear ghosts of the past or something like that? And that's always very possible. And then they could draw on a number of people if they wanted to do that. And we could speculate on who that might be. And I think we all have this kind of deep, dark wish that somehow Luke Skywalker, makes contact of sorts. And we've speculated about Yoda maybe showing up because Yoda seems to show up everywhere. And it would be a great thing. I really don't want Yaddle. I got to be honest with you at all. Please don't do Yaddle. You seem to like Yaddle. Yaddle's like my Maz. Like, no thanks.
Oh, really? Wow.
Maz is awesome. I don't know what your problem is with her.
Oh, she's terrible. Maybe it's Maz that shows up.
She's a blaster with a poet and a jetpack. So, anyway.
Maz is force sensitive. We learned that from novelization.
She's fantastic.
So maybe she shows up. How about that one? Oh, I'd close that series up right now.
I hadn't thought about that. I'd have to get a new host.
Yeah, I'm just going to walk out the door when this happens. So
we're going to have a live stream of that episode and just see what happens.
Yeah.
But so it seems like Ezra's on the board now. All of a sudden, he seems to be the front runner of sorts, unless we have dead characters that come back. And we know that, I mean, Ewan McGregor's out there. We know, Yoda and those types of characters. So, but, now I'm kind of hoping it's Ezra. I got to be honest with you. I'm kind of hoping Ezra. I don't know if it's in the series though.
Yeah.
That's the part I struggle with.
If you didn't catch the last episode, I'll probably say a couple of things the same. Although I've been thinking about this a lot over the last week. I don't as much as, again, I would love to see Luke. I had a whole thing about this in Discord again yesterday, where it's like Trevorrow was saying when he was writing episode 10 or 9. The minute you introduce Luke Skywalker, you've got a massive problem on your hand, because now you got to deal with him. You have to contend with him, right? He is a force to be reckoned with, and you wouldn't be able to put it past Luke to be able to just completely turn the tide and end this series at the end of this season, right? So I just think he's too big of a character. Plus, he's doing his own thing right now. He's got a lot on his mind. As much as I'd love to see Luke Skywalker, holy crap, that introduces all kinds of problems for me. So I don't want Luke Skywalker to show up. Ahsoka, again, to your point, I don't think she would. Why would she send him on this, wild goose chase? Doesn't make sense.
Right.
Ezra, I would love to see. He's one of my favorite characters. I've said very recently he is my favorite character. It just really depends on the day between him and Luke Skywalker. But as much as I'd love to see him, I feel like that would then be bleeding into the Ahsoka Tano Sabine series, and so maybe it's a springboard of sorts. But then I don't know. It gets messy really fast, really quick, really fast for me. So again, another character I would like to see. I said Quinlan Vos would be somebody I'd be interested in seeing. We don't know his fate. We know he's probably still out there somewhere. He could be hiding. His character, right? Quinlan Vos he was kind of like the covert ops, right, of the Jedi. They sent him on all the dirty missions, right? The dirty missions that were kind of like they want to keep hush hush and not really get out. Black ops type stuff, right? That would be a really interesting dynamic, I think, to have him be a part of the team. And that's where I want. Let me preface this as well, although I've already started on it. I would like to see whoever shows up not take Baby Yoda and leave, and then we don't see Baby Yoda again. My guess is Baby Yoda or Grogu. Sorry, Grogu is going to stick around with the Mandalorian, and whoever shows up is now part of this crew. Is going to be. I think we're going to see him or her in season 3. Should they be able to go? Because I think I don't want to rule out force sensitive people or force ghosts in any way, right? I think Yoda showing up at the very end would be an interesting dynamic, and maybe he does. Maybe he's able to manifest himself on the ship from time to time in season 3 and help train and do all that stuff.
So we're going to turn this into Rebels 2, like directly.
With what?
I mean, as soon as we start having Jedi on the team of sorts, starting to feel a lot more like Rebels all of a sudden.
Yeah. No, and it would be
more like Rebels, I think.
It would be more like Rebels, right? Because now you've got a Kanan teaching Ezra on the Ghost, and while everything else is going on. I mean, they've done it before. So yeah, I guess it would feel similar, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. I guess it really depends on who shows up, right?
I'm a huge Quinlan Vos fan, by the way. And of course, Dark Disciples is my favorite Star Wars novel. But I got to be honest, he's one of those characters I would love to see his own series with, because, like you said, he's kind of the dark ops. He's the guy that gets in the grit. He's the one that does the dirty work of sorts. And so I don't necessarily want to see him here. There's a lot of buzz about Mace Windu. And I just got to get your take again. Is Mace Windu someone you want to see come back with Sam Jackson, of course? And I'm gosh, at the risk of being negative again, I'm really burned out on bringing people back from the dead, or even the quote unquote dead. And I think just, can we let Mace kind of be, where not every character that we killed off in the prequels has to still be alive? Can we leave a couple of them dead? Where I just don't know that I want Mace Windu to be back. Can he be a ghost or something? Maybe, sure. We can go that route, and that might be kind of cool to see. But I mean, I just don't know that I want to see him back on screen. And and now Grogu's fighting with a purple lightsaber.
So my take on Mace is, depending on. I'm not against it, and again, my mantra is just give me a good story. I'm not opposed to it by any means. I think if he is going to come back, I want to see him. I don't want him to be the good. In my opinion, he's never really been a good guy. He's been really kind of a jerk face for the most part. Same thing with Yoda. No, sorry if I'm offending people now, but go read the books. But for Mace Windu, I would say I would like to see him back, but I want him to be almost like an antagonist character, not a protagonist character. like almost what's his name? Cyboth.
Jorah Sabath.
Yeah, Jorah Sabath. Like something like that, where at first you think he's kind of like the good guy and he's really trying to help you out, but really he's got ulterior motives. And I have this whole theory.
I really like that, actually, by the way.
Yeah. So, and I even threw his name out there. I'm like, why just bring him? You've already brought Thrawn back, and Palian. They mentioned him in or in Rebels. I mean, forget it. Let's just get everybody back in here, right? From the old Heir to the Empire series. But that aside, in my head, I have this whole theory with Mace Windu coming back and being a character like that. And then you've got the dynamic of Mace Windu now confronting Boba Fett, right? Hello, you took my dad's head, right? So there's going to be some tension there. And what if Mando and Boba are like this, and suddenly now Mace Windu shows up? You're like, oh great, he's going to teach a child. Mace Windu Din Djarin has no idea of the history here, what's happened, right? And I think that would be a really interesting dynamic. I've got another whack theory around the Chosen One prophecy. Yeah, so the Chosen One prophecy, and it goes, and I'll try to make this brief, but it goes something like this. So when we know that the child was born around the same time as Anakin, if not within days of each other, right? I think someone's done the math on this, but somewhere around the same time, at least within the same year, they were born as one another. And in my head, at some point, and again, this is just one of many I have, but in my head, at some point, the child was, they did a midichlorian count and realized this guy was off the scales. And somebody like a Yoda and a Mace Windu and maybe an Obi-Wan or whoever else, some of the really high up people, maybe not Obi-Wan, he wasn't that high, but those two at least, suddenly thought, okay, maybe this is the Chosen One. And what should we do with him? Well, we can't have him out there with everybody else. And they sheltered him. And so maybe Mace Windu and Yoda thought that the child was the Chosen One. And then suddenly you've got Qui-Gon Jinn, who shows up and goes, hey, guess what, guys? I found this kid named Anakin. He's got a high midichlorian count. I'm going to bring him up. And so when he goes into the Jedi Council and he tells him, and Mace Windu has that line from The Phantom Menace where he says, and you believe it's this child? And he looks over at Yoda. There's a very, you could take that look as, is this really the prophecy? Or if you go down this route, then they're looking at each other and go, wait a second. I thought we had the Chosen One and we've already acknowledged him. And now we've got a second one here. And maybe this would be, and then you get into the whole thing about, is this the Force trying to balance it out, right? Yoda, Anakin, we think about Rey and Kylo Ren, the dyad there, or the Force, giving power to Rey, or, having her come about to kind of balance out Kylo Ren. Maybe this really happened back then as well, where Anakin was born and the Force said, okay, I need something to counter this. So he immediately spawns or has some, whatever, the Force decides to bring up Grogu, right? And that he was supposed to be the counter because Grogu never really was around and was, had dark times and was put to the side. That's what allowed Anakin to turn into who he was and, shift the tides with the Empire. So, wow, that's a whole lot there. But
does that start to retcon a lot of the Qui-Gon stories that we got in the Dooku stories with Dooku Jedi Lost and with Master and Apprentice and some of even the Master and Apprentice and the certain point of view? Does that start to water that down quite a bit, though, if it goes something in that direction?
I don't think it does, only because, when he says the prophecy may have been misread, though I think the one thing that we got from Master and Jedi more than Dooku was that these prophecies they've been around forever. They've continued, they recycle, they repeat themselves. Right. And a lot of times people don't really know whether or not it's true or not. They're all believing it is, but it may not be. And that was my takeaway from Master and Apprentice, is that we can't really trust the prophecies. So I think for me, I felt like prophecies were maybe watered down a little bit back then from that novel. But yeah, I mean, it's just a crazy tinfoil hat theory that I've got, but that would be a whole lot of stuff that would suddenly turn this series into a whole another series. But anyways, all right. Wow. Where were we? He says, we're talking about Fennec Shan. They're about to get overrun. He whips out whistling birds, fires those things. And if you guys want to tell me I'm crazy, please do so in the comments. I don't mind. I love the feedback. Honestly do. He says, I owe you from last time. She says, we have a deal, which I thought was pretty cool. That they were, again, there seems to be some honor here among all of them. And then the Mando is the human shield again. and again, nitpicking. He's a heroic character. I get it. Yeah. And these are, surf stormtroopers that you wouldn't expect to really be on target, but it's a numbers game. If they're firing that many shots, you got to think he's got to get hit in those weak spots of the armor. But I don't know.
It would have made so much more sense if he's wounded and can't get back up to the child. Yeah, just
there you go.
Him.
Right.
For goodness sake, let the guy take a hit and not be dumb. Because now he just looks dumb. Like, go get your jetpack, dude. Like, It's a lot faster to get up there. So let him take it. I just don't know why we're allergic to letting him get hurt again. I mean, he was hurt. He was mortally wounded in season 1.
Yeah.
And they healed him. Okay. But it was a kind of a plot point as well. It wasn't just something of convenience. Like, this would have made a lot of sense. Like, for him to finally take a hit, that he has squishy parts. So let him get wounded. Let him take one in the hip or the leg. And, he can survive. It doesn't necessarily have to be, mortal, but just let him take a hit, please. Like, I don't understand why we are so afraid to let him take an injury. Why does he need to be, so heroic in this way? And so really just all of a sudden he's impermeable. Like, all of a sudden he's, from Rogue One with Sheridan. Yeah. And then them. So I just don't. I'm at a loss on this one. Just let him be human. I just want him to be human. I think that's the only ask I have. And right now, his intelligence is very human, or his decisions are very human, but his the way that they're perceiving the character of how he's going to get hurt, what he does, are very inhuman in that respect. And I think it's just degrading from the character. It's just taking away just a touch from the character of humanizing him and making sure that he's more relatable, and that he really can take a hit when he's just inundated with fire.
Yeah, it bothers me a little bit.
Now.
No, it bothers me a little bit too. But it's not. I mean, I'm not like cursing the series and burning stuff down by any means. But yeah, it would be nice to see him take a hit. I get it. It's Beskar. We all know it is impermeable to laser bullets, but he's not wearing it all around him, and with that many shots coming at him, it just
right. And thank you, Utini, for saying it's like they haven't heard of Bacta. Exactly. Bacta's a thing. Although there was the Bacta Wars and there's Bacta shortage and things like that, which I don't know how canon they all are at this point, but still, I'm with you.
Hey, another plug for the Dooku Jedi Lost.
There you go.
Talk about a lot about Bacta in that one. All right, let's pull the Band-Aid off and talk about the return of Boba Fett, the return of the Mandalorian, if you will. But what did you think when he showed up with his armor there?
I was really afraid I was going to hate it. And oh my goodness. Like, the way that the way that he framed the character was just so heroic. And like, posed like Captain Morgan stance on there. And you didn't get to see the belly quite yet, but just that very first pose, dude, it was epic. I mean, that was like an epic pose for him, and it was great. And the entire sequence, I'm like, Albert is over here saying, I'm glad I did the weapons. I'm glad we did the weapons. I'm glad we did the weapons, because we finally got to see some of them. And dude, he was badass. Badass. And we got to see the knee rocket, the knee missiles, which I was like, okay, that was really cool. That was completely unexpected. But I was like, man, Albert is going to feel so vindicated for coming up with that idea.
Yeah, that was really good. I was so happy. I was like, oh yeah. I was like counting them all. I was like, okay, now use a flamethrower. He didn't use a flamethrower though, but
man, he used the rocket. I mean, and had it like in the chest of the stormtrooper, and dude, it was awesome. It was like, okay, this is what someone with the armor can do, where everything looked ill-fitting on Cobb Vanth, and he was good, and really, kind of good and kind of badass, but now it's just like, nope, this is what you do when you're Boba Fett. And,
yeah. I'm with you too. Like, I was just elated, honestly, because, again, going back to our speculation show, this is one of the things that I wanted. I said, I feel like Boba Fett needs to have his moment. I feel like he needs to have a redemption story of some sort. And I'm saying redemption light. Like, I'm not 100% convinced that he's going to be completely do a 180 and be the good guy. I think
we don't need him to.
And we don't want him to. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. But I wanted him. I wanted this. I felt like he needed this, right? From a canon perspective, he really did need this. There were so many people that, and I don't think we realized this, so many people that have never known Boba Fett because they did not they didn't watch Legends or read comics or the books or anything that stuff, right? So to them, all they've known is this one guy that shows up, and yeah, he's tracks Han Solo down, but he's a bumbling idiot in episode 6 or whatever, and that's not him, right?
Or he's a kid in the Clone Wars cartoon. I mean, yeah, you're right. There's just limited access to who.
Yeah, they didn't do
nothing as an adult, effectively.
Yeah, exactly. And they didn't do him any justice in the Clone Wars either. He's just a whiny little brat half the time that was spoiled and couldn't get his way, and things didn't go his way. And this was the Boba Fett that we got from Legends. We got to see him in all his glory. And you were cheering for him, right? I mean, he's fighting stormtroopers. You couldn't help but cheer for him. I mean, I cheered literally when he did that punch and then fired the rocket off into that guy's gut and sent him flying off. I was cheering at that point. And then, of course, it ends with him firing that missile off the Z6 jetpack, which I thought was really cool that he said I was aiming for the other one. There was a little bit of levity there in that moment as far as what was going on. But again, that was another Robert Rodriguez, slowly the badass walking up. And we kind of saw this with Cobb Vanth at the end of, chapter 9, but same thing kind of here. Again, very Rodriguez in terms of how he styled and framed all of that. But yeah,
and honest, of all the directors we've had, like with this sequence, I can't think of any of the other ones I would have rather had do this than Robert Rodriguez with the way that he did it. I mean, I'm in love with this whole sequence. Like this whole battle sequence in general was just fantastic, but the way that he presented Boba Fett. And I know some people are a little upset that, Boba's been a loser. And we've talked about this too, even with like Anakin and Vader, right? He's always been kind of a loser. And are we going to beef him up now? Why are we making it more about, why are we making him this great character now that he was kind of a loser? Well, there were a lot of things we assumed that he was that we just never got to see, right?
Yeah.
He had a reputation. The reason why that he worked for Vader so often or for Jabba was because he presumably was very good at what he did.
Right.
And we just didn't get we didn't have a lot of content to be able to find that. And so I like that we finally get to see who Boba Fett really was and who he can still be or who he still is. And I think that was really important for us to do, to really give that gravity to the character that I think enhances and builds on Empire or builds up Empire and builds up, well, maybe still makes Jedi look a little weird, but it still just enhances the character and pulls it and gives him just more on-screen time for us to say, no, he really is this good and this amazing. We just didn't get to see it until now.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're a Boba Fett fan, I guarantee you were either cheering or crying, and they were happy tears to kind of.
I was probably doing both. Yeah,
doing what he did in that. And the other two things, one, I like the fact that he is the older guy now showing up. It was like somebody's dad showed up to a fight, right? Started whooping butt with all the other kids that were fighting there. But I got shades of like. Seeing him in this sequence, shades of Vader in Rogue One, right? When we got to see him for the first time doing what he did and choking people and even all out, right? It was very similar kind of experience for me where it's like, yes, that's the person we knew from books and comics and from playing with our action figures, right? We got to finally see that on screen, which I thought was just absolutely brilliant. So
that's a perfect simile. Yep.
Okay, let's talk about the tragedy. And I'm gonna just start right now. I called it. Razor Crest was gonna die. Was cheering, texting people.
Let's take a moment. Silence for the Razor Crest.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. This doesn't do well. Silence doesn't do well on podcasts, by the way.
No, it does.
People start going, what did volume get kicked out?
No, they skip to the end anyway.
Yeah, that's true. And they listen to us on like 1.5 speed. So this was like one of the most shocking moments, I think, in Star Wars lore. Or am I being
did you see this coming, like in this way?
No, the Razor Crest felt like it was too good, and it was, I don't know. I had this sinking feeling that this season we were going to lose it. I thought it was going to be on entry when it was hopping along, entering onto the water planet, the water moon, right? Mm-hmm. I thought that was where it was going to happen, and then when it didn't happen, I was like, okay, I guess I'll take it since technically it fell in the water and they had to repair it. Okay, but I was really hoping, I guess, I know that sounds sadistic, but I was kind of really hoping that something really bad would happen to the ship, and man, did it ever.
Oh boy. Is there any coming back from this one, or can we officially call it dead? I gotta know, is this dead enough?
This is dead enough. Like,
okay.
I think
this is complete obliteration. So
it's obliterated. Right. There's no coming back from this. Now,
Razor Crest Force Ghost or what?
Can they find another one? Sure. I mean, they probably could. That feels like a stretch now at this point. Are they setting this up so that Boba Fett dies at the end of this season or next season, and suddenly Mando takes over Slave One? Or is Boba Fett just a permanent figure now, and it's just as much as his ship as it is Mando's? Or, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I don't know that I like that. I gotta be honest with you. I don't know. I'd be okay with him getting a new ship. I just don't know what that ship would be. Do I want him to have another Razor Crest? Because again, that's the ship style and all of that. But I don't think I have to. I think it's okay for him to evolve into something else and to see what that transition looks like and to see him struggle with it. It's another kind of, not a plot point, but just a character development or kind of a hardship for the character of adjusting to things, especially if he maybe doesn't have Grogu with him or something. He just has all this wholesale change. I like the idea of Boba and Slave One kind of going off on their own. And I got to be honest with you, I'd be a little surprised if Lucasfilm and Disney killed off Boba Fett, because it's another alternative of someone that they can bring back and work into either this show or some other show at some other point where they know it's going to be a draw. And I think regardless of how you feel about Boba Fett, there we go, that, he is a draw. He is going to be a draw, especially once people see this. They're going to be like, okay, yeah, well, where's his show? Because I want to watch his show because he looks pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And so he'll probably get another ship. I'm okay. I want Slave One to stick with Boba. I don't know why Boba would start handing out donations to people for the most part. Once they square up, Boba's, see you later.
He's out.
We're even Steven. So going to move on now.
Yeah. I agree. We just don't know enough about Boba Fett yet. Like, we don't know what he's doing or where he's been, all that. I think all that's going to weigh into what happens with him and ultimately any potential series that he would have. But more on that in a little bit, because I don't know how I feel about a Boba Fett series now. But we'll talk about that here in just a minute. The Dark Troopers come in, so we were worried about Baby Yoda getting kidnapped. And that's the thing. Like, so I know we really don't talk about spoilers on this show ever, to be honest. But the Baby Yoda being kidnapped or being separated from Mandalorian was something we knew that was done. It was the Entertainment Weekly article that was ran. We
knew it had to happen eventually anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. It was probably bound to happen, but we knew this was going to happen. I didn't envision this was going to be it. But the minute he fell on his side and suddenly was exposed and safety net was gone, I kind of figured, okay, this is where it's going to happen. And sure enough, the Dark Troopers fly in. Very Iron Man, Jon Favreau kind of look to them when they're coming in. I don't mind that at all. But I think now that we've seen them, though, like we were talking about, they look more like the Mark III Dark Troopers. It feels like it's more 2, maybe. They feel like wider, like the 3s, but they look, from the face anyways, they look more like the 2s. But not that it really matters.
A bit of a best of both worlds, I think.
Yeah.
I was disappointed we didn't get to see them in action, though. I was really hoping we'd have some sort of action sequence with them. I think
they're saving that.
Yeah, this would have been a really good opportunity for that, where they can still take Grogu, but maybe they take one of them out, but they can't. They're overwhelmed by the others. I thought that would have been an interesting sequence, rather than really literally just being able to pick up the kid and then bolt up with really no resistance at all.
Yeah, it was probably a cost thing. Those things are all CG, I'm going to guess. So maybe cost-wise, it didn't make sense for them to spend a lot of money here and save it for the finale.
You point that out. I was really curious if some of the stormtroopers were CG as well, especially like the first one that came out of the transport looked very CG. There were several that looked very CG to me. Some of them were obviously very, live action, but I think there were some CGI stormtroopers in there as well. More than 1 or 2. So,
maybe. Favreau said that, anytime they can do practical, they'll do practical. And only you see, he's been pretty light in terms of when he uses CG. I think most of Grogu's has been practical. There've only been a few moments where they've done CG. So maybe it all depends on what they're trying to go for. But yeah, so they kidnapped the child. So again, we knew that going into season 2, unfortunately, good or bad. Boba was going to take them out, but then was told not to because, he risked, shooting the child, which all makes sense. And then this is where we got the line of they're back, the Empire. And I do take them. Like, I don't feel like, we said this earlier, so if you're just joining us, I don't feel that Boba Fett is doing he's going to turn on him, right? He's not doing a double agent kind of thing here. If anybody's doing it, and I think it was Pedro, somebody said Fennec Shand. I could see her doing it. But I don't think Boba, I believe him. He looks sincerely surprised that the Empire was still around. I don't think he's working for Moff Gideon. I don't think he's working for Thrawn. I just don't see why. And it gets so messy having to explain all of that. And I just don't buy it. But he does seem genuinely surprised that the Empire is still out there. Like, I just saw a ship, right? And then Fennec says the Outer Rim is under the jurisdiction of the New Republic, which we all know, according to Mando, the New Republic is a big joke, right?
But why does Boba? I get the sense that there's like fear in his voice. It's not just surprise. It seems like there's actual. At least maybe that's just how it came across. But it really seemed like he was a bit scared, and like I just don't understand why that would be the case. Did you have any thoughts on us there?
No, other than I said, like, we were talking about would he churn, and I said the only reason he if he was still in good favor with the Empire, and suddenly a Jedi shows up, and with his disdain for the Jedi, I could see him going to the Empire. But based on what he said and the way he responded to the Empire, I kind of got the same feeling. Like, I don't think he knew they were around. Maybe he had heard rumors that they were gone, or at least thought they were gone, because he found out the second Death Star blew up and all the events of Return of the Jedi. But yeah, it did sound like maybe there's some history there, or there's something that is genuinely concerned about with the Empire being around. Like, what does that mean for him?
Yeah, because it seemed like it was a pretty good paying gig. He could just move in and out when he wanted. I mean, he working for job on the side or whatever that relation, those things look like. It didn't seem like there was any real bad blood for the most part. He delivered when he needed to deliver. He delivered Skywalker's name to Vader in the comics, and kind of did what he was supposed to do. So it was very surprising to me that he just had this reaction to it, and maybe it was just genuine surprise, and he was at a loss.
Right, nothing more than that. It could be,
but it sure felt like a little bit more than that, though.
Yeah. Well, time will tell here. Especially, I'm hoping this next episode when we get some more backstory on what was going on. And
I hope so too. Yeah.
So the wreckage, only the Beskar knob and the spear survived. And someone mentioned, I forget, someone said something. Yeah, it was Dale said, did anyone notice something different about the ball? I've seen this talked about and reported on. The ball has like a little blue thing on there, and it didn't have it before.
It's got a hole in it now. Yeah.
Yeah. And some people said, well, maybe that's where the tracking device is. But I mean, you got to think they see this thing all the time. Baby Yoda's playing with it all the time. They would have noticed something that obvious, right? So I don't know that.
It's much easier to put it somewhere in the hull, or even, I mean, they were repairing the ship almost top to bottom, so they could have flipped it anywhere.
Exactly.
It makes a lot of sense to put it on the inside somewhere, or like in the plating or whatnot.
Yeah. What about the sniper rifle? Like, in my head, I'm like hoping that Boba Fett went in and grabbed that too and said, whoa, I need that. Grab that, and didn't tell him, and that'll be a big reveal in the next episode. But that seems like a huge loss, because those things aren't just, laying around everywhere. You just can't go run into a Walmart and pick one up.
I don't know how you explain that he would have it. Unless Boba somehow had it and laid it down, but why wouldn't he have used it on, stormtroopers, I guess?
I don't know.
But yeah, that's disappointing. I mean,
it's neutralizing for him, right? Because I mean, that's a pretty impressive weapon, and we've seen him use it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen him use it 4 different times, I think, and he's got him in a lot of jams. Opening episode, as well as with the Krayt Dragon, and all sorts of times. And so that's a big loss from his kind of weaponry of sorts. And honestly, it was just really cool. And you hate to see the really cool stuff get vaporized, but again, we've seen them craft things before, and maybe he would be able to craft one again. And maybe it's not the last we'll see of the rifle.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah, I'm sad. They're really just, I mean, they're breaking him down, right? They're neutralizing him in a lot of different ways. He's lost his child, he's lost his ship, he's lost his rifle, goes on.
I really liked how you could just sense the sense of loss though with the ship. He's picking through it, and you really actually get this feeling, and even Boba's, having to divert his eyes a bit.
Yeah, and Fennec Shan too. They're both like, geez, this is awkward.
Yeah, I mean, but it's the same thing you would have seen with like Han Solo, right? With the Falcon, or I imagine with Boba and Slave One too. You just have this attachment to it, this connection to it, and you just, for it to be gone in an instant, and it just kind of leaves a soft spot. It was really captured well though, and I thought they did a good job of really bringing that forward, and you could actually kind of feel it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a character, right? And I kind of copped out when I said who was going to die this season, and said it was going to be Razor Crest, but it was a character, very much like the Falcon, right? It had its own personality. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. It's gone though, Jim. Sorry, it's dead. So we get the chain code thing, and so we were going to kind of talk about this. I know a lot of people have already broken this down. The Mandoa code, or the Mandoa language that was written in the chain code.
Mandoa.
Yeah, Mandoa. But it says Fett, Boba, Father Fett, Mentor Jazz, Concord, Dawn, the year, and then took into the Foundling. So all of this again goes back to that Killing Seasons or Open Seasons, I think, or Killing Seasons comic book. Which again, if you're a Marvel U fan, you can go read the whole thing. It's actually pretty decent comic book. But this differs from what Olmec said. So Olmec said, "Hey, Mando was never really a Mandalorian." In the comic book, we find out that Mando lived on Concord Dawn. He was living there with his mom and dad, and there was a journeyman protector, which I really want to get into a lot of this because I know we're getting short on time, but that's the symbol, right? That journeyman protector symbol is that little like a leaf thing that he has with a number, right. That symbol that Boba Fett has on his armor. That's the symbol for a journeyman protector. And what they were basically protectors for Mandalorian protectors that went out, and they were kind of like justices of the peace, right? Or deputies or whatever, kind of ran around as police officers. Right. But this guy named Jasper Muriel is the one who was the protector. And when one of the Vizslas came down to the planet, they killed Boba Fett's parents. Boba Fett runs off. He runs literally into, and his parents were like farmers. They grew crops. So he's in the fields and he runs into Jasper Muriel, and Jasper Muriel takes him in and protects him. And he's like, hey, and then there's a whole thing that goes on where they end up killing Vizsla and there's a big fight and all that stuff. But the key takeaway from that comic book is he's taken in as a foundling from Jasper Muriel. So, so again, from what we know to be a Mandalorian from this series, where foundlings are Mandalorians, that, and like I say, it retcons, but it definitely puts Jango Fett into the light of a true Mandalorian. Right? He's not born on Mandalore, but in terms of what we know from this series, because Jasper Muriel brought him in, he is a Mandalorian. So that was the one key takeaway. And the other thing that was very different, I think, was that maybe not different, but at least confirmation that the armor now was indeed Jango Fett's armor, right? It was not his own. And if you look at Legends, he being Boba had his own armor, and he had modified it and did all kinds of stuff, and that's why it never really looked the same. But now we're saying, okay, it is the same thing. I don't have a problem with that. But it was interesting that now this is that it is. It's just his dad's armor. So there's some more value there. There's more weight to it.
Right. Yeah, I had a few thoughts on here. So I like when we get Jasper Muriel because he was also in Republic Commando books, which of course were some of my favorite Legends books as well. And he was in there with some of those characters, which I thought was always really cool. The thing that I was also like that they had Concord Dawn, because Concord Dawn actually has a really interesting kind of history to the planet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, part of it was just blown out entirely, and I really wish we kind of get more around the planet itself. But I had a question around the chain codes. So if the chain code is into the armor, is built into the armor, what purpose does that really serve? Because I'm always like thinking like, and maybe this is from Legends, I can't remember, but they would have like all of these fail safes. So if you tried to get into the Falcon or whatever, there would be some sort of mitigating defense if you didn't put in the right code or something like that, rather than, everybody leaving their doors open to their ships like this series seems to want to do for practically everybody. But I didn't know what the chain code and having it into the armor actually meant. I mean, I guess it could be like, writing your name in Sharpie on the inside of it.
This jacket belongs to, and you write your son's name in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that. But I didn't know if there was actually some reason to have the chain code put in there, aside from, this is the history of the armor and we expand on the history throughout time, or whether or not there was actually a practical purpose to have this in there to where they would do something. I mean, clearly there's not a self-defense type of thing or anything like that. But I was just curious if you had any thoughts around why it was important for the chain code to be part of the armor, if it was just denoting the history of it.
No, so my thought or my theory here is that, so we're learning that there are a lot of different sects of Mandalorians that are out there, and they've got different practices and different ways, right? You can take your helmet off, you can't take it off. Maybe the Death Watch Mandalorians or some sect of Mandalorians wrote that in because to them the armor is almost like an heirloom, right? It's passed on from generation to generation, and in recording that history, if ever the armor gets found or something, you have a way to go and trace it back to the family, and the right thing would be to do is to take it back to that family because it is an heirloom of sorts. That's the best I could come up with, but
that makes sense.
Yeah,
sometimes the simple answer is the right answer.
Yeah, so maybe it was just a Sharpie. I don't know. Right. Probably the most simple answer in there.
But I guess it's more of this chain code type of thing that we got with Kara too.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. What is part of her chain code now? It just raised more questions there as well.
Yep. Okay, we talked about Jango Fett as a foundling. We said that that he fought in the Mandalorian Civil Wars, which I think is pretty big. That was something I'd never have guessed that Jango did. So again, that gives him it certainly changes my perspective of Jango Fett, right? Which is I've never really seen or looked at Jango very highly, just because I hated him in Attack of the Clones, which I guess makes sense. And then so Boba agrees that he's going to stick around until the child's returned safely, which I thought was really cool. I got really excited at this point that they're both in debt to Mando at this point, and that Fennec she doesn't look very convinced though, right? Like Mando or Boba Fett he seems like he's all in. Hey, that we're going to do this. We're going to see this out. We'll find your child. Yeah. And Fennec Shan's like looking off to the side, like either she doesn't believe him or she knows something up. Maybe it is a double cross. Maybe she feels like maybe she's got other orders and. She wants everybody to believe that she's in, but she's really not in. Or maybe she doesn't like the idea at all. Like, man, this is not really what I signed up for, but I guess I have to.
Actually, I had kind of a flashback to the Clone Wars cartoons where, Boba would make a decision when he was, younger, and the others would like look at him funny, but they're like, all right, well, you're the boss. So
yeah,
it seemed like a continuation of some of that.
Okay, we get back to Navarro, and really great to see. And I mean, this is where we got to hear Slave One coming in, into orbit or coming out of orbit. Spinning, right? Yeah, I mean, it's good stuff. It was really great to see it. Cara Dune is now the Marshal, so that was something we had said with that medallion that they had given her, right? That those stripes match the stripes on Cobb Vanth's buckle. So officially, she has now been deputized as a true Marshal in the eyes of the New Republic.
The New Republic,
which is, again, very interesting. We brought it up in the last episode, or maybe it was one before, but yeah, this seems very...
It's like, why? Yeah. I mean, we saw the conflict, right? I think this is last one we did together. We saw the conflict there of what she was looking at and what it meant to her and what the decision might be. But I don't understand. If she's worried about the New Republic, why would she join up? And then did they know they were going to find her and they just give her? There's so many questions, Albert. So many questions. And I don't understand. And again, the stripes mean something all of a sudden, where Cara Dune was clearly...
That wasn't her.
No. And I just... What has changed her mind? And maybe she views this as a second chance. The slate's clean, and now she can kind of do the right thing. But as you've kind of pointed out here, that everything's got to be above board. But then as soon as Din says they've got the kid, well, all of a sudden she's got this look of like, okay,
hell no.
What are we? Yeah. What do we got to do?
Right. Yeah. She seems like she's all on the up and up, and then suddenly, when he mentions a child, she's like, okay, well, she's going to do what she needs to do to help him. But yeah, this seems very at odds with her character as we know it. Like, and I think I made this point either in the last episode or the last one you were on. Up until now, she was trying to get away from everything, and she went to the farthest planet she could find where there was no one around, and didn't want to be bothered by anybody. She was just looking to retire. Now she's like at the forefront of a Marshal for a rebuilt city that's hustling and bustling, and the New Republic is now acknowledging her. It just seems out of character. So maybe they'll explain that. Maybe they won't. But it does feel like it's at odds for what we saw in season one.
It's for a planet that they presumably really don't care about, but maybe they want to have some presence there now, I guess. So, I mean, maybe I don't have to get too far. I don't have to it doesn't take me too much to get to that point. But yeah, the change in her character. I hope they give us an idea of why she decided to join up.
Yeah.
Aside from just some obvious answer. I really hope there's more to it.
Mando is looking for Miggs Mayfield, which I didn't, again, we said this last season, Filoni does not do filler. He just doesn't. You may think it's filler and you may think we'll never come back to that, but it all comes back. It always all comes back in some way. But yeah, this is certainly a character that I didn't anticipate we would see them in this, a return like this, right? Where he's going to go back for him. And we know he was ex-Empire. Yeah, I thought he was a sharpshooter.
Yeah.
So
that's what they call him. Yeah.
I'm guessing he needs them to track Moff Gideon's ship. So I'm really curious as how they're going to tie those two together. I'm sure they'll do a fine job of it, but of all characters, Mayfield is coming back, which I didn't mind. I mean, I thought he did a fine job.
He doesn't really play well with others though. So it was a curious choice. I mean, I get you want someone that's a good shot, but you can't trust him not to stab you in the back. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like I would have picked, and there's got to be tons of bounty hunters in the guild he could have won if he just wanted an arms person, right? So there's got to be something about him that's special that he needs in order to track Gideon's ship. Maybe he knows Gideon. He served with Gideon. I don't know. They'll probably give us give us some reason here later.
Yeah. Toffee over in the comments says that he can't believe he left his jetpack. What were the writers thinking? I think that he probably took his jetpack. A lot of happened off screen when they, boarded up on Slave One. So I'm assuming he went back down there and grabbed it. I can't believe they would leave the jetpack.
Oh no, they wouldn't have left it. They may not have shown it, but
yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's one of those things that happen without us noticing.
Yeah, and there's times in this series where Mando has the pack on, then he doesn't have it in the next scene.
There's some inconsistencies. Yeah,
there's some inconsistencies. So don't fret about that. We get to see the database of thugs that are out there, and I know that people have broken all this down, and we're not going to do that in the interest of time. Most of these folks, there's some really cool, there's some cute little Easter eggs in there with Kobani, right? I forget where some of the other ones were. I think what would be more interesting though is that if some of these characters showed up later in other episodes, either in this or we see them show up in the Cassian Andor series, or who knows, right? But be able to just kind of tie all up, and that would play into the idea of what they're trying to do with a lot of the live action stuff on television, and kind of interweave them, much like the Marvel U did, right? This is just kind of on a smaller scale, so that would be a really cool way to do an Easter egg and tie that together. They've got material now to work with on those other series. Right. So we're getting to the very end. We're aboard the Imperial ship at this point, and Grogu is like toying with them. He's definitely tapped into the dark side. He's force choking them. He's slapping them around. I mean, if you think about it, it's a kid who's scared and it's fight or flight, right? He's cornered. He's going to do whatever he needs to do. So I wouldn't read too much into the fact that, he's a dark side character or he's evil or anything like that. I've seen people talk about that. It's a child. And he's
tapping into fear, right? And
exactly.
And Ahsoka called it. But again, you can see how much more powerful they are when they start giving into that. And it's like Yoda always said, it's quicker. We're not quicker, but it's just more seductive, and it's a delusion of sorts. But yeah, it was cool to see him exert that power though, almost effortlessly there for a little while.
Yeah, there's and then once it's over with, he doesn't kill them because they both I think get up, if I remember correctly. But he says you've gotten really good with that. And so that almost kind of leads us to think that there's some history there. I mean, he could just be saying, or he knows that he's been around for 50 years and he knows something about Force users. And now he's seeing that somebody of 50 years old as a child has the ability to do what he just saw. Or it could be that he has some history there where he had the child at one point, or demonstrate. Maybe the child did demonstrate this earlier on when he was with, was it the client? What was his name?
Yeah.
But yeah. So I won't read too much into that, but the child's sleepy, right? We know he's exhausted now from using the Force power. That stormtrooper hits him with that was like, how dare they shoot him?
Right.
When they shot him with the...
They've punched him and now they're shooting him.
Now they're shooting him, set the stun, which is cool. We don't get to see that often, the stun setting used very much in Star Wars. And then they put him in those little like binder cuffs, like the
cutest shackles ever.
Baby binder cuffs that were like glowing with blue light of some sort.
Cute.
Yeah, it was very cute.
Well, I loved it when Gideon said, you're all so sleepy. It just reminded me of Obi-Wan. Rest easy, son. You've had a busy day.
Yeah.
It was just kind of the delivery of that was very reminiscent. But yeah, cutest shackles ever.
Even when shackled, he's cute.
Oh my gosh, and, like amplified cuteness.
Yeah, it's just kind of on his side there. He says he tells about he wants to send a message to Dr. Pershing that they have their donor. So we threw a lot of speculation as to who the donor would be. Whether or not this was what they intended originally when it was written, we don't know, but they definitely have someone there. It sounds like they're going to go try to draw more blood and do whatever nefarious experiments they're doing.
Right.
That kind of ends the episode. So just kind of final thoughts here. Like, so where do we go from here? Next episode, I'm assuming they're going to they're going to get Mayfield out or break him out. We've only got 2 left, right? So it feels like we're going to probably get that out of the way pretty quickly. I would hope, because I don't want to spend a whole lot. I don't want to spend an entire episode on the breakout or doing whatever they're going to do to get him out. And are they going to do that illegally, which would be interesting, or how do they get him out of a being locked up?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm with you though. So what made the season finale so great in season 1 was it was kind of a 2-part episode, right? Mm-hmm. And we had the chance to establish it and to have a bit of a cliffhanger and then wrap it up with the way that we were able to conclude it with an even more fantastic cliffhanger. So I'm with you. If we're going to go and rescue Mayfield, let's get this done quickly and get it out of the way. It's going to be, they're going to have to crack him out, right? They're going to have to break him out. But can they just get it and get where they need to be? Like now I'm at a loss as to where the actual battle is going to happen with Gideon. I'm a bit at a loss as to where that's going to be. whether it's going to be on Gideon's ship or if it's going to be on a surface somewhere. I'm a bit out of a loss as to where that's going to happen at this point.
Yeah, because they don't. They can't go back to
Navarro, because
Navarro, right? It's all blown up. So yeah, maybe we're going to get a new location where they've got another experiment lab. I mean, they've got to be taking the child somewhere to experiment on. I doubt they're going to do it on the ship.
It could be another lab somewhere.
Yeah, some other lab elsewhere. Maybe that's where the final setting is. Right. But I think one of the bigger questions that I've got too going into the last 2 episodes is, one, okay, I want to get Mayfield out of the way. Like I get it, he needs him. I don't understand why he does, other than he has a way to find the ship or has some background, and maybe he knows that Mayfield worked at the lab or knows the locations of where some of these labs are. Who knows, right? But get that out of the way, and then we got to tackle this. We got to tackle the number of Dark Troopers Gideon has. We only saw 4 of them or whatever come down, but we saw 2 episodes ago he's got a whole bunch of these things.
Yeah, right? 10 or a dozen at least.
So let's just assume they're Dark Troopers from what we know, right? So they're gonna have probably their armor, right, is either going to be Beskar, which I'm hoping that's what they do. I hope they this is where we've been talking about why is Beskar so sought after outside of the fact that it's its properties, but it feels like people were collecting this stuff. What if it's been Moff Gideon has been collecting Beskar, melting this down and building this army of things, right? That would really be a punch in the face to the Mandalorians to see that happen. But it also puts them at a huge advantage to have that many. And so then you got to say, okay, so this is the Rise of Skywalker series again, or dilemma again. You've got all these Imperial Star Destroyers. What force is going to come and reckon with that? The same concept here. You've got all these Dark Troopers that have all these great abilities. You can't shoot them with blasters. You can't hit them with if it's Beskar, not going to do a whole lot of damage with a lightsaber. So he's going to need a lot of people, or some like Luke Skywalker, I guess. I know I said I didn't want that to happen, but who is going to unless they do some other cockamania plot thing where suddenly they're offline, and hopefully that doesn't happen because that's already been done too many times in Star Wars. But it seems like he's going to have to put a team together. So are we going to get Ahsoka come back, and are we going to get Bo-Katan, and is it going to be Ezra or some other? And you've got those 3 people plus Cara Dune and Greef Karga. And I mean, is this like a massive end game battle that we're going to see here?
I mean, yeah, I could see where that would have to be the case to do it. I'm actually liking the assembly of this crew better than like Cara and Greef, right? And of course the Mithril. God, please don't bring him back. But sorry, you were taking a sip there.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it's seeming like they've got the odds stacked against them. So I'm almost curious if the Dark Troopers won't be made of Beskar. I like the idea. I'm with you. I like the idea, but is it so insurmountable that then we get into this position where they're too epic to do this, and then we've got to bring too many people in? And I think the end game, similarly, is very accurate in that regard. And while I wouldn't mind seeing those characters, we talked about this earlier. We don't really see a reason why Ahsoka kind of sent them out, but maybe Ahsoka comes back in because all of a sudden we are at risk. Maybe how is he getting in contact with Ahsoka? Because presumably she didn't stay over on Corvus, right? So how does that work in? But you could see where they would need a pretty super crew, and who else could you think of better with Bo-Katan and Ahsoka? And presumably they're in contact with one another, so maybe there's a thing there. But I'm really liking the crew aspect that they have, because it's got firepower to it now, and it's kind of a badass crew, especially now with Boba and Fennec, yeah. So I like that aspect of it.
Hondo, there we go. Thank you, Pedro. Yeah. Hondo Naka shows up.
True. I mean, he shows up and everything kind of works, right?
Yeah, he shows up in everything that Dave Filoni does. So we'll see him.
So how about this? So we were always so worried about Boba upstaging Mando. We were concerned it would happen if he showed up. Did it happen? Is it going to happen again? What's your take on that?
So my take on that is I don't think it happened. I mean, it felt like Mandalorian was a little bit behind, like he was upstage for sure in this episode. But again, this is the first time we saw him in what I say, 37 years or whatever, and it's been a number of years in real time, I guess, story time. So he had to have a moment, and we got it out of the way, right? Again, I don't have a problem with him sticking around. In fact, I do want him to stick around so long as he's not the same Boba Fett and there's a new dynamic to him where he's now the grizzled warrior that's maybe not seen his ways and he's not a completely good guy, but at the same time, he's not going around just ticking everybody off and, peeing in the wind anytime he get a chance he gets. He's not the brat that he was, right? I'd like to see that more. And I like to see the fact that he's now connecting with somebody else who's a Mandalorian. Like, I feel like that's a part of him that we're acknowledging the fact that he is a Mandalorian now, that he is a Mandalorian through his father. And he's also a Mandalorian in the same way that our Mandalorian is a Mandalorian. And I think there's going to be a bond there. And I said it earlier, but I think they have a lot to learn from one another and grow. And so I kind of see this as a kind of a buddy cop type thing going forward. I'd like to see him I don't want him to leave in season 2. I'd like to see him in season 3. That way we can get more of his character. We can hopefully get the full redemption arc that I want personally for Boba Fett so that he can go out with a bang wherever that may be. Last thing on this, Boba Fett, I said I'd come back to that. I don't know that I want, okay, let me rephrase that. I would want a Boba Fett series, but now that we've had The Mandalorian, unless something drastically changes with Boba Fett, like he has his just life-changing event in some way, right, it feels like we're going to have a lot of what we saw in season 1 and season 2. And so how do you differ that from The Mandalorian that's going on right now? You know what I mean?
So let's look at Kenobi then. So Kenobi, we know, is going to be a very short run, 1 season only type of thing. 6 episodes, something like that. Would Boba fit into that mold of a show better? And we take it from the end of Return of the Jedi or some of that path between then and now. Would that story kind of work if you did one shot, handful of episodes and go from there?
Yeah, I'd be good with that. Yeah, I think it's the serialized weekly.
I agree with you.
I don't know that we're going to, what story is left to tell that we haven't already seen here? Again, unless something really drastically happens in his life where he suddenly becomes some other person or goes into some new role.
Right.
Like, I don't know, hunting down First Order people, or I don't know. It's got to be something it's got to pull you in, and it's got to give us something I think that's different than either what we had in Legends for those of us that know Legends, and then certainly it's got to be set apart from what we see today in The Mandalorian and what we've seen from The Mandalorian, other than just another bounty hunter running around collecting bounties.
Right. I really like the idea of seeing the difference between Bo-Katan, Din Djarin, and Boba Fett. 3 different ways of the Mandalorian culture and lifestyle and what they've chosen in their paths. And because I still see Boba as kind of this outsider. He's not necessarily going to adhere to those models. And he's like, no, I'm kind of my own person now, and a bit still more of a loner, which I think works for his character overall. I don't see why we would, differ or start to vary from that a whole lot. But I like the idea of like these 3 different ways, so to speak, of the Mandalorians operating and how they would function together as a team. I think would be really interesting just to see that dynamic between them all.
Yeah. And then just to be clear, like, I'm still in on my theory of the end game being him uniting all of these Mandalorians that we're seeing, because we've got the Bo-Katan, we've got now Boba Fett. I said that back in the speculation show, I said what I wanted to happen ultimately was him pull all these different Mandalorians that we know of, including like Fennec Rau, not Fennec Rau. Dang it, what's his name? Fenn Rau. Thank you. Yeah. Fenn Rau. Like, I want to see him as well. He was a protector. We've got a backstory there for him. We've got a Cobb Vanth, who, again, he was really not a Mandalorian, but by definition, maybe he does get deputized as a Mandalorian. But ultimately, he's going to pull all these Mandalorians together, and there's probably more, right? There's all these different sects that are running around,
Vizsla and the armor and all that.
Yeah, exactly. I want to see him bring all these people together, and then let's move into season 4, where we're now going back to Mandalore and confronting whatever's going on there, and ultimately taking back Mandalore. And whether he becomes the Mandalore or maybe it's Bo-Katan, I don't really care. But the fact that he would be instrumental and pivotal in reuniting and in rebirthing Mandalore back to former ways or former life or existence, I think would be a really cool concept, because they haven't had that for so many years on Mandalore at this point.
Well, and it really starts to bring in and refocus the show. After we've kind of been in all these directions, we brought Jedi in, and we've got some of that. If we get to that with season 3, I like that idea of really starting to focus it in on Mandalorian and the the revitalization or the freeing or the liberation of Mandalore, whatever it might look like, the reestablishment, however you want to see that fit. But I think it would really be a great thing to reshape the show, especially if a season, I mean, because how many seasons do we think this is going to go? I mean,
4?
3 or 4, really? I mean, this is kind of like Rebels. It's kind of feeling like, okay, it's cool and all, but are we kind of getting to where we're at the end of the run of what it might look like of how much story we want to tell? Not necessarily running out of story, but just what are the ones we want to do? And I could really see that shaping the show back and focusing it on truly Mandalorian stuff, where right now we are very little to do with Mandalorian stuff, except we have Mandalorians involved. And so I'd really like to see that focus come back.
Yep. Okay, well, I said it'd be a 2-hour show, and we're at 2 hours and 9 minutes. So you're welcome. Thanks for everybody who's sticking around. I know we had a lot of people have to go after 1 hour. A lot of people came back second hour, and we've got a number of folks with us still tonight. So thank you all we'll be here all night. Thank you guys for your contributions, and it certainly helped us have a very lively and great discussion on a really great episode. I mean, we took a 30-minute episode and turned it to a 2-hour show. So hey, but that's what we do, right? So, but we'll be back next week for chapter 15. We're down to 2 episodes, like we said already. So we'll see, man. I don't know where this is going to go at this point. But any final words before we get out of here?
No, man. Great episode. Looking forward to how they wrap this up. And again, we're finishing with a full head of steam, I think. And so I've got really high expectations what these last 2 episodes are going to look like. So I really hope that they deliver, because we've got a lot of momentum now with the last few. So I'm really excited about how we're going to wrap this thing up.
Me too. Be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That way you guys don't miss these episodes. And please follow us on the podcast as well as our social media sites. And we'll be back here next Sunday for chapter 15.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.